163 3D Sonic levels ranked from worst to best. Now let's get into it. First, with brief, and I mean brief, ground rules. 1. No DLC or bonus acts. These are often designed to be as difficult as possible for true masters of the game. That means there'll be no extra missions from SA2, no DLC from 06 and Unleashed, and no Final Horizon from Frontiers. If they were on the list, they probably wouldn't rank that high. 2. Stages with multiple variants are counted as 1. In Sonic 06, you play Dusty Desert as Sonic, Shadow, and Silver, but I'm only doing one entry and factoring in the total experience. 3. With Colors and Lost World, some levels are entirely 2D, and some recycle stage designs. There's only going to be one entry for Tropical Resort and not 6. Act 4, for example, is just a piece of Act 1 again. And then Act 2 is just a direct continuation of Act 1. So it's easier to just count it as one big stage. Lost World could have gotten separate entries for every 3D act, but then there'd be over 28 Lost World slots, and I don't want to talk about that game, let alone its 3DS counterpart for that long, so only one entry per zone from Lost World. Heroes will sometimes have Act 1 and 2 fused if I have the same opinion on both levels, and if I don't, then there'll be two separate entries. I just happen to have more to say about Heroes than something like Lost World, so all is fair in my book. 4. This only counts high-speed action stages. No mechs, no werehog, or any other gimmicks that are incomparable to the main action stages. 5. Each stage was ranked in the categories of speed, platforming, and replayability. Those are the three things I like the most in Sonic, and each stage was given a point from 0 to 3 in each category for a maximum of 9 total points. A perfect score would mean that speed takes effort to maintain, platforming that takes practice to master at that high speed, and it's a stage that I could revisit on a moment's notice. And with that all established, we may now begin. Coming at the bottom of the list is number 163, Frozen Factory from Sonic Lost World 3DS. One of the saddest realizations I had while making this video was that I would have to play Lost World 3DS again and talk about it. I don't need to repeat my review of it too much, so let's just talk about the stage. Picking a worst level from this game is pretty difficult because they're all pretty much bottom tier. Mercifully, I didn't have to play every stage because some of them are all 2D, including the one where this happened. But the 3D stages of this game are agony because they go on for so long, and then in the later zones, what they spend that time on is excruciating. Frozen Factory just had to be the worst one on the list because Act 1 goes from a snowboard section to ice physics to an over-reliance on the Lightning Wisp to using snowballs as weights for switches, back to the Lightning Wisp, back to the snowboard. It's too much and none of it is that fun. Act 3 is the true endurance test. It's room after room of pushing snowballs to make them big enough to fill slots while being chased by a menacing snowball. This takes 10 minutes to accomplish. It's like anti-Sonic stage design. Slow, boring, not much in the way of interesting platforming, and something you'd never want to replay, which made it a great pick for the very bottom of the list. Number 162, Silent Forest from Sonic Lost World on the 3DS. I have a personal vendetta against this zone. Of its two 3D acts, neither one is very good, but the first one is all about the Quake Wisp, the stone that smashes through things and presses switches. I had the most awkward time getting to grips with this thing when I first played the level because it really is difficult to control and steer because it uses the 3DS's gyro to move around. The level's too long as well. In Lost World 3DS, the timer counts down, and in this stage, I timed out in the first playthrough and got a D rank. It was just really disorienting to play, and you also have to do these freefall sections with the kind of graphical pop-in that would make Sonic Frontiers blush. The other 3D act is just jumping from grind rail to grind rail for far too long, and some basic parkour controls, and fighting repetitive enemies with the Lost World kick attack in between. All this takes place in the middle of nowhere in the sky. All that may be harmless if the level didn't go on for 10 minutes, but then the timer gives you like 25 minutes to beat it. Like, sheesh, how long did they think first-time players would take on this? Number 161, Tropical Coast from Sonic Lost World on the 3DS. This is another terrible one, which is self-evident given its score of a flat 0. I just find it, and most levels from this game, antithetical to what I enjoy about Sonic. Acts 2 and 3 are 3D, so we'll focus on those. Act 2 is on an elevator, and you need to push fruit into a blender in the middle to fill the room with juice that rises the platform up. In between, you'll be taken to other stage segments where you need to guide fruit into holes that lets you back onto the elevator to keep pushing more fruit into the blender. Like, wow, what an exhilarating concept for a Sonic stage. No need for high-speed reaction-based platforming here because we've got fruit to push into a blender. I think it's fair to say a stage gets a 0 for a stupid idea, especially because it's doing nothing else that is Sonic-esque, even slightly, so yeah, it sucks. Act 3 is more like a real Sonic stage, but you spend most of it underwater trying to navigate with the Drill Wisp, now fully 3D, and I don't enjoy this stage either, since again, it so heavily revolves around controlling a Wisp and not playing as Sonic. So therefore, I don't find it fun to play the first time, nor would I want to replay it. Number 160. Sky Road from Sonic Lost World in the 3DS. You should probably know the drill by now, but this level goes on far too fucking long and mostly revolves around boring wisps. Some of Lost World 3DS's worst levels are the 2D ones. Sky Road is definitely a case of that, but we thankfully aren't talking about those. The first proper 3D stage can actually be cleared quickly if you know what you're doing and where you're going, but the gimmick is using the asteroid wisp to gather enough stuff in your orbit, letting you jump higher and reach the next path of the level, which will be above you in all cases. But it can be really disorienting to find which direction you're meant to go in, so when I didn't know what I was doing, it took forever. So huge points off on speed and platforming here because it doesn't really have any of that and it's really one note. I also wouldn't want to replay it either. And Act 3 is also repetitive. You ride gyro-controlled rockets and fight enemies and do parkour. Credit to the game, I guess, there's more parkour in it than the Wii U game required, but I think it sucks. Thankfully, only 2 more entries for this abysmal game are on the list. But we're not talking about that one next. Number 159, End of the World from Sonic 06. Finally, we're talking about something other than Lost World 3DS, a game so bad that Sonic 06 feels like relief by comparison. Obviously, it should go without saying that this list is only counting levels from the actual Sonic 06, not the fan-made remake Project Sonic 06 by Chaos X. If P06 counted on this list, it would dominate the top 10, bar none. See my silver release review from 2023 to hear all about it. But just looking at the original, things are not good. End of the World is the final stage in the last story. You play as Tails, Omega, Knuckles, Silver, Rouge, Amy, and Shadow searching for the 7 Chaos Emeralds to bring Sonic back to life after his death at the hands of Mephiles the Dark. Sounds kind of cool, and the visual of previous stages on the brink of total time-space collapse is neat, but it's Sonic 06. More than half the characters I just listed are sub-functional, so playing as them through a tough gauntlet is bound to be completely miserable. The characters, mostly Knuckles, Silver, and Amy, barely have the mobility needed to escape the grasp of the time portals that suck you in and kill you instantaneously. You've only got like 5 lives to do it in, so it's a steep learning curve. It's also really unbalanced too, because Tails, Omega, and Rouge will get really easy segments, but then the rest are much more difficult. Because it's 06, the speed is almost non-existent, the platforming is cheap and frustrating, and because it requires 7 loading screens to beat, adding an extra 3.5 minutes to the runtime, I wouldn't dream of replaying it. Easily the worst level in 06, and one of the worst levels in the series. Number 158. The Doom from Shadow the Hedgehog. When thinking about the worst levels in Shadow the Hedgehog, The Doom, Mad Matrix, and Lost Impact are some easy go-to picks. But I've always enjoyed The Doom the least. Both it and Lost Impact are flashback stages of Shadow on the Space Colony arc. In The Doom, Shadow runs around a giant maze trying to either escape, destroy the gun troops, or rescue the researchers. No matter what, getting around this stage is super confusing because the rooms all look the same and the map is huge. In Shadow the Hedgehog, many levels fail to provide platforming since the game's goal is to run around and destroy a certain number of targets. When there is platforming or speed, it's marred by the game's really slippery controls because you take off to max speed in seconds and can't really steer it properly from there. The Doom gets my vote for the worst level because on GameCube there will be this glitch where one of the gun troops you need to destroy in the dark mission will fail to load in, so you have to use the checkpoint teleport mechanic to force the enemy to load in. If you didn't know that, your A rank is probably done for. And since I've A-ranked Shadow the Hedgehog twice now, I can say that this is a stage I never look forward to. Number 157. Lost Impact from Shadow the Hedgehog. Lost Impact could take the cake for the worst Shadow level, as it's basically the same thing as the Doom, just with these minigun rides that bring the pace to a screeching halt as you track down all the artificial chaos creatures. Many of these are in plain sight, but some of them are like needles in a haystack, and if you miss it, you just need to scour the area in the hopes of finding it. It's bad. Quite bad even, for all the same maze-like reasons as the previous stage, though I put it above the last one because there's no run-ruining glitch, and there are only 2 missions in this stage instead of 3. So for that reason, I can deal with Lost Impact better than the Doom, but I wouldn't want to play either one. Number 156. Luminous Forest from Sonic Forces. If I felt it was fair to put this stage at the absolute bottom of the list, I would have. The theme of the next 3 entries is, wow, they really insulted your intelligence with this one, huh? As you'll see much later on the list, boosting Sonic stages have the potential to be some of the best levels Sonic has ever had. Sonic Forces is not a showcase of that potential. We all know that I think this game sucks, but the poster child of how bad I think the levels are in this game is Luminous Forest. Beginning with 17 uninterrupted seconds of plowing through enemies that pose no threat by holding down a single button. Then a 2D section you clear by jumping and boosting, and then more 3D sections easily cleared by holding down the boost button, and then a scripted sequence with a giant snake. This level is rancidly designed. Alternate paths present the illusion of depth when it's all just straight lines and automation. It is definitely the worst 3D level in Forces, and a great example of how much the boost gameplay had fallen in quality between Sonic Generations and Sonic Forces. Number 155. Mortar Canyon from Sonic Forces. This level is supposed to be the climactic finale of the game, the last modern Sonic stage as you make your way into Eggman's base while the Resistance army holds the line. Sounds kind of like there should be some impact to this level, but it's a stage where you just jump and boost over the entire thing, and it's only about a minute long. Hard to sell a moment when it goes by in the blink of an eye. Engaging with its multiple paths is just making it take longer for no reason. Jumping and boosting over it is far easier and is rewarded, I might add. The stages have collectible red rings, and in the middle of the level, the red ring is handed to you if you take the short and easy path over the side paths with nothing in them, which is just antithetical to how Sonic stages are usually designed. Another disaster of a level. Number 154. Lost Valley from Sonic Forces. The first level of Forces demonstrates everything wrong with the 3D sections of this game in one short stage. Boosting forward with enemies that don't even try to attack you and no obstacles in sight? Check. Multiple paths that do nothing but give you the illusion of choice when either way the game plays itself? Check. 2D sections you easily jump boost over? Also check. Compare the opening levels of Unleashed, Colors, and Generations to this dog water and you'll see the downgrade. But hey, at least Forces sets expectations low right at the start. So there's that. Number 153. Central City from Shadow the Hedgehog. This level got higher than the other Zeros from Shadow because it's not quite as confusing and frustrating to navigate. The problem with Central City is that there's no neutral get-to-the-goal ring objective here. You either help Knuckles disarm bombs or help Black Doom set them off. Doing so is like looking for a needle in a haystack. Since the map is open and outdoors, it's not as claustrophobic as the Doom or Lost Impact, and I have to put more effort in while playing than I would while doing the lowest tier stages from Forces that I just discussed. But the stage does not win any points because you inch around looking for bombs with barely any fun action platforming, and I have no desire to ever play it again. It's also on a timer too, so the level is just not good. It's not the absolute worst, but it's not good. Number 152. The Ark from Shadow the Hedgehog. The Ark isn't even some unspeakable abomination, it's just boring. Shadow the Hedgehog will occasionally make you ride around a winged Black Arms creature, but it's just one part of the level in stages like Sky Troops or Cryptic Castle. In the Ark, it's basically the whole stage as you shoot targets for minutes on end, and you occasionally have to jump off of it and hit a checkpoint or whatever, but these moments are few and far between. I almost considered not including this level on the list because it doesn't really revolve around core gameplay, so therefore it'd be almost impossible for the stage to earn that many points in categories it wasn't even trying to succeed at, but I included it anyway, and it ranks pretty low. Number 151. Final Judgment from Sonic Forces. The final stage of Sonic Forces is a real showcase of what the game is all about. You'd think Sonic and the Avatar breach the fortress to destroy the Phantom Ruby prototype would be something cool or challenging, but no, you quick step through some spikes, easily done, and it's something you've been doing for the entire game. That has not evolved in difficulty even once. You jump from rail to rail, you destroy stuff in a 2D section, and then you get a double boost sequence straight to the end. While having speed at all might seem like it's worthy of a point on the board, I don't think it is. The final stage of this game is such an obligatory repeat of boost Sonic tropes at some of their least difficult, which means I'm not giving it a single point. The level's trash. Number 150. 4-8 from Sonic Frontiers. You really never know what to expect when you load up a cyberspace stage from Sonic Frontiers, and in the case of 4-8, that is absolutely a bad thing. The level can be cleared in under 30 seconds and is such a barrage of random assets, most of the runtime spent on pulleys and bouncing between springs and trick rings. Half the time I didn't even feel like I was even playing, and again, the level lasts like 30 seconds, so yeah, this is my pick for the worst 3D level in Frontiers. It somehow manages to be a complete clusterfuck, despite having next to no runtime and barely letting you play. Number 149. 3-5 from Sonic Frontiers. 3-5 requires more interactivity than 4-8 because you have to steer Sonic through these tight corners, But the issue is that the drifting controls are awful in this game. The stage is the only one in the entire thing that uses them, but it doesn't function like Unleashed, Colors, or Generations. It's super stiff and slippery at the same time. Honestly, the level is actually simpler to clear when you just jump over the drift dash pads and run normally. When the stage's core gimmick is drifting, that means it's not looking at a good review. So I'd say it's a bottom tier cyberspace level from Frontiers, just not my absolute least favorite. Number 148. Desert Ruins from Sonic Lost World 3DS. I considered giving Lost World 3DS zeros across the board because it's not like I'm sitting here actually wanting to replay Desert Ruins from Lost World 3DS sooner than Lost Valley. Honestly, if I never had to play either one of these again, it would be too goddamn soon. But with the way the score system works, this one technically earned more points. The early levels of LW 3DS are pretty bad, especially when Desert Ruins makes you do this obnoxious maze level where you step on a warp pad and go to different locations and you have to keep guessing until you find the right ones. But the main act is alright. You'll be playing as Sonic jumping through obstacles, using the parkour and all that good stuff, and I thought the Asteroid Wisp wasn't too overbearing in this stage, so I was willing to give it a 1 for platforming, the first stage on the list to score a single point. Number 147, Windy Hill from Sonic Lost World 3DS. And finally, we are done with this crappy game. Windy Hill is when LW 3DS put its best foot forward. The levels aren't too long, and you just play as Sonic for most of it. I still don't find the speed element that present, and the controls are sloppy, the platforming's pretty basic compared to the Wii U Lost World, so it's not earning that many points, but it's a relatively harmless level and a pretty diabolical game. I don't want to replay it, and it's not fun, but it's doing enough to earn a single point. Honestly, it probably ranks so low because it is Lost World 3DS, and I just don't want to see these mechanics and stage designs. It's more like guilty by association than anything else, but whatever. Thank goodness, I'm done with this one. If you were curious, Lava Mountain is in Lost World 3DS, but it's only a boss rush and a final boss. There's no stage for it, so it didn't get included. So like I said, Lost World 3DS is off the list. Number 146. Mad Matrix from Shadow the Hedgehog. This stage was one I'd considered giving a 0, as Mad Matrix features one of the worst missions in the game, destroying the bombs for Black Doom on the digital trails you get on. This is so minimal from an interactivity standpoint that it defies comprehension. It goes forward automatically and you just need to turn every now and again. And you can't avoid doing that in the neutral or hero missions either. These digital tubes are how you progress to the other data towers in the other missions. So the whole thing is defined by this mess. The platforming is okay at the beginning, but in later sections there are too many elevators and such. But I did think that opening minute was decent, so I was willing to give it a point for that. Otherwise, it's a pretty putrid stage because you don't even know where you're going for half the time. You can't change the camera, there's no map telling you which towers house the goal ring, and so on and so forth. It's just a poorly designed stage. Number 145. Aquatic Base from Sonic 06. Aquatic Base is one where I'd love to give it more points. It's a really cool concept for a stage, a hidden lab deep underwater of an otherwise not technologically advanced society. In the present, Eggman uses it as a base in Sonic's story, while Shadow and Silver play it 10 years in the past to uncover the truth. That's a great setup, but the stage is awful. Sonic and Silver need to get past this section with a metallic ball that is unreliable when trying to control it, and if you bump into anything, it just disappears and you die. Most of the platforming is fine, but it's ruined by how poorly 06 controls. That jank factor is also why the speed category gets a 0, and as any of the three hedgehogs, it's a stage you wouldn't want to replay because you either have to stand there fighting enemies in Shadow's stage, or get game over standing on a ball as Sonic and Silver, or worse, playing as Knuckles in Sonic's version who is sub-functional as I said earlier. Not a good look. Number 144. The Last Way from Shadow the Hedgehog. The final stage of Shadow was never one I really liked. In this game, the stages Black Comet, Final Haunt, and The Last Way are basically skin swaps. Each one has its own gimmick, but there's a lot of level design reuse. I guess that makes sense because they all take place on the Black Comet, but I still don't really like the asset reuse. As I said, each stage is unique enough to get its own entry, but The Last Way happens to be my least favorite of them. The goal is to run forward and kill as many enemies as possible, as doing so fills up your hero meter, which allows Shadow to fly forward with chaos control. Every now and again you'll reach a point where you can't progress and enemies will infinitely respawn until you fill up the gauge and teleport away. It's just very one note and not that fun to play through. It's one last boring stage before the final boss. I guess you could say that's a fitting end for Shadow the Hedgehog. Number 143. Tropical Jungle from Sonic 06. Tropical Jungle is less frustrating than Aquatic Base, but it isn't going to win that many points. In Sonic's version, you play as him carrying Princess Elise, which limits his moveset considerably. For example, you can't spin dash or use the gems. It just makes Sonic slower than he already was, which is a shame because Sonic's Tropical Jungle features a really open second section that's begging to be explored. But with long loading screens and these terrible swinging sections coming before that, it isn't one I want to come back to. In the other stories, Tropical Jungle is much different though. You play a big open map trying to get from one side to another. In Shadow's story, you play this as Rouge, who like Knuckles is barely playable. But in this stage, her ability to glide makes the level super broken. You fly over the entire stage and can beat it in less than a minute. In Silver's version, you have to engage with it a little more, but it isn't much more fun as you ride around on slow-moving turtles. It's not a great showing. In fact, it's a poor showing, which is why it's so low on the list. Number 142. Aqua Road from Sonic Forces. Now we're getting into the Avatar levels from Forces. As the list shows, I think the designs for these stages are better than those of modern Sonic, however Aqua Road isn't much of an example. You spend the majority of the stage sliding around water slides. The parts where you're on the ground give you something to replay because having different Wispons gives you alternate routes to explore that make it slightly faster, but the level otherwise leaves much to be desired because it's pretty automated. The water slides all go at a set speed, which means you don't earn or maintain that speed, which means it's really boring to play. Number 141. Arsenal Pyramid from Sonic Forces. This is the first tag team stage in Forces, and it's also not much of a winner. In my review of Forces, I went over how you don't control Sonic until 7 seconds in, and you jump around for 10 seconds, and then you give up control to automation for 40 seconds or so before making it inside the pyramid. 10 seconds of interactivity in the entire opening segment, which is just awful. It's not a good level to play because the opening is just nothing for a whole minute, more or less. Then, inside the pyramid, there are lots of ways to engage with the stage, for the same reasons as Aqua Road, but like that level, it doesn't mean much when no matter what, the routes are mostly playing themselves, and the runtime is so short that you don't really get to enjoy it anyway. It's another stinker. Number 140. Terminal Velocity from Sonic Colors. This is Colors' first appearance on the list, and we won't be seeing the game again for a long time. But its final segment does not earn that many points. Terminal Velocity sees Sonic running down the space elevator that connects the Earth to Eggman's interstellar amusement park. In concept, that is a cool final stage idea, but in practice it's a glorified quick-step section. So you have almost nothing to do besides moving left and right and occasionally jumping. It also has a really long runtime, so if you die right at the end while being chased by the laser robot, you'll have to do it all again, and only then will you feel like this level has almost nothing in it. There is speed, but Sonic is running forward automatically, so the stage will have the same runtime no matter what. It's not fun to replay, and you don't have to do much in the way of jumping around or reacting to interesting obstacles, so I had no choice but to put Terminal Velocity towards the bottom of the list. Number 139. Sunset Heights from Sonic Forces. Now we've reached Forces levels that I don't think outright insult your intelligence, but are still pretty badly designed. This was the first stage shown off for Forces, and I knew I wasn't going to like the game from the moment I saw this level. It's super linear, the alternate paths are giving you the illusion of depth that doesn't really exist, and you can clear the level in like 40 seconds. And despite fans saying it was probably just the first level when it was shown, the truth is that this is the middle point of the game, and it's pretty goddamn lame. But I did give it more points than Lost Valley or Luminous Forest because this one doesn't keep you locked in automated sections for prolonged stretches, and can be satisfying to clear in record time in a cosmic sort of way. So I didn't leave it as low as those ones. Number 138. Park Avenue from Sonic Forces. Park Avenue is basically the same stage as Sunset Heights, only you play as the Avatar over modern Sonic. Because of this, it has more platforming with the Avatar's Wispons, and just generally feels like a more complete stage. But it's still really basic and short, so it's got the same score as Sunset Heights. Number 137. Dusty Desert from Sonic 06. This is another level in 06 that's much different for Sonic than it is for Shadow and Silver. As Sonic, you carry Princess Elise and explore the outside temple grounds. The design of this stage is pretty good. It's very open-ended and only has one loading screen, so it's one of the more manageable 06 Sonic levels to enjoy. It's just a shame that Elise limits your mobility. The Sonic version of Dusty Desert might have ranked a lot higher because I think the level design here is good enough to where the sloppy 06 mechanics aren't that much of a bother. However, the Shadow and Silver sections drag it way down. Well, really, just Silver's. Shadow's is bad for the same reasons as the rest of the game, clunky combat and slow movement, but Silver's is truly iconic in the worst way possible. Silver has super slow movement, You play as Amy for a portion of it, and she is by far the least playable character in the game with abysmal ground speed, the smallest attack range you've ever seen, and a pitiful double jump. And then the cherry on top is the ball puzzle Silver has to solve at the end, which succumbs to the janky physics engine and Silver's slow speed. It's bottlenecked countless players who dared get this far. You can spend several minutes on this, and for that, Dusty Desert is one of the most infamous Sonic 06 levels. Number 136. Hot Shelter from Sonic Adventure. I wasn't sure if this stage was going to make the list at one point. Of Sonic Adventure's 11 action stages, Hot Shelter is the only one Sonic does not play through. In fact, it's the only stage where none of the main trio touch it. You only play it as the slower characters, Amy, E102 Gamma, and Big. I later decided to include it because it satisfies the condition of linear action stage where you get to the goal ring. I knew it wouldn't rank very high. When just looking at Hot Shelter for Amy, the stage has platforming and is probably the best level for Amy, and it's also the best level for E102, but you just don't go very fast as Amy by design. You walk around really slowly and avoid getting chased by a robot and solve some basic puzzles. If I ever turn on Sonic Adventure, it's so I can replay Sonic's best levels. Therefore, I don't ever want to replay Hot Shelter, nor is it a fast-paced platforming experience, so I kept it low on the list. Number 135. Misty Lake from Sonic and the Black Knight. Sonic and the Black Knight is a game I've always felt positively about, but even in the video I did on it, it's pretty clear that this admiration is in spite of the game in many ways. I think it's much better than the sum of its parts because the sum of its parts is not a pretty figure. Secret Rings and Black Knight are both on-rails spectacle-based games, so I tried to factor that into the ratings. Just looking at the main level for each world, because if you factored in side missions, Secret Rings would go right alongside Lost World 3DS at the bottom of the list. I wanted to keep it simple and look at the levels at their best and think, how much would I want to replay this stage? And for Black Knight, that usually didn't mean much. Misty Lake, for example, is the tutorial area of Black Knight, but it does enough to be its own entry on the list, unlike the tutorial of Secret Rings. When judging it on its own merits, there isn't much here. You move forward on a linear track and swing your sword when you're told to do so. It's not joyless because the combo swing and soul surge make any Black Knight stage somewhat enjoyable, even if it ranks really low relative to other stages. I like the visuals and theming, but there isn't much to see here. Number 134. Deep Woods from Sonic and the Black Knight. Deep Woods ranks low for many of the same reasons. Black Knight levels can be fun to go through if you have the right gear and know how to do the combo spin attack. However, the speed is one note since the game is very scripted and the stage has this massive chunk at the beginning where you ride a horse and just swing back and forth with no challenge in sight. The rest of the stage is fine, has cool set pieces like avoiding the traps in the woods or knocking over this wooden pillar to grind on it. That stuff's cool, but the stage is just nothing special in the grand scheme of things. Number 133. Lava Mountain from Sonic Lost World. Now we get talking about the true Sonic Lost World, which has always been one of my least favorite games Sonic Team has ever made. Though, standing next to the other Lost World, it looks like a fucking wonderland in comparison. But Lava Mountain's main 3D act didn't earn that many points. Well, because I don't really find Sonic Lost World fun to play, but also because it does squander many of its would-be cool moments. The outdoors area features a ton of dash pads to automate your movement and make sure you don't die, taking away a lot of the joy you could get out of the stage. There are also parts that could have been tricky parkour sections. This is what the whole game was marketed around, but you can easily skip it with the hover wisp located right at the start of the parkour section. I think that's a really lame thing to do in the final stage. Shows a lack of confidence in these parkour mechanics. And I can see why, because they weren't that great. Number 132. Frozen Factory from Sonic Lost World. While being light years better than the 3DS stage, I think this level's really boring. The first act is a bunch of different pathways, which to its credit are all substantively different, unlike what I've been describing with Forces up to this point, but since a lot of it revolves around tubes, it can get kind of busy visually, which makes me wonder if I'm even going in the right way half the time. This zone is also home to the infamous snowball stage where you inch around encased in a giant snowball and get bounced around the area and often fall to your doom. And there's a casino level that comes straight out of nowhere with a pinball section that might leave you stuck for a while if you want to get all the red rings. It's not atrocious or anything, but the zone doesn't earn a lot of points with me because I don't like the main act. And when not looking at the pinball section, the casino level is very straightforward and bland. Just spam the spin dash and watch Sonic go. And that's all she wrote. Number 131. Tropical Coast from Sonic Lost World. As far as Lost World levels are concerned, this one is alright. But as I said, I just don't jive with Lost World as a concept. The opening act is fine. It's a little easy to just skip past obstacles by spin dashing around them, but it is speed and platforming that gets the job done. There are some segments where parkour is put to decent use, but the other parts where you collect butterflies and jump around on clouds are super slow. It's a very average to below average stage. But then the next 3D act is very slow. Instead of pushing fruit into a blender like the 3DS Lost World, you wait for fruit to slowly chase you around and lead it into a blender that will take you to the next level segment. As stated before, I just think ideas like this are not what I'd ever want from a Sonic stage, so therefore when Lost World pulls ideas like this, I feel like it's fair for me to place them at the bottom of the list. Number 130. Sand Oasis from Sonic and the Secret Rings. This is the first proper level of Secret Rings, and it definitely delivers in terms of spectacle, visuals, and music. But the level itself is nothing too noteworthy. Secret Rings has this level up upgrade system where Sonic's speed and other stats go way up. Later levels that up the challenge take better advantage of these abilities, however a level 1 Sonic is going to take a really long time to get through this stage, and not that much happens in it to compensate. And then a fully maxed out Sonic replaying this level can just blitz through it in no time. It can be almost funny to do this, like holding down the jump button during this wall walking section. It totally breaks the game. Now, I put this Secret Rings level, and spoiler alert, many Secret Rings levels over Black Knight's roster because I'm not factoring in extra missions or game pacing into the equation. Black Knight is a much simpler playthrough and is much easier to pick up and play than Secret Rings, which is a shitty game in my opinion, but when looking at the main act, I think Secret Rings' roster is more compelling. Sand Oasis is a level I'd remember much more fondly than Misty Lake, for example, which is just about all I'm looking for from these Storybook game stages. Number 129. Metropolitan Highway from Sonic Forces. This level ranks higher than other modern Sonic stages from Forces because I do think it requires more of players than the ones I've discussed thus far. In Metropolitan Highway, you'll need to do platforming that you can't skip over effortlessly, a lot of which is 2D, but still. It makes for a more compelling stage than Lost Valley or Mortar Canyon. The 3D section showing off how much was taken from the boost gameplay in this game, as there's a drift section that's almost completely automated because the game doesn't have drifting. And then the stage just ends right as it gets going, so it's not good by any means, and I sure as hell wouldn't be playing it in my free time, but I think it has more going for it than many other Forces modern Sonic levels. It helps that I think the aesthetic of this area is when Forces looks its best, making a great display of what the Hedgehog Engine 2 can do from a lighting perspective, but still, it's not a high-ranking stage. Number 128. Black Comet from Shadow the Hedgehog. If this ranking were about music, this one would rank pretty high. The theme is a pretty chill one and is as a result one of my favorite tracks from Shadow the Hedgehog. But the stage itself isn't great. I feel like it's the longest of the 3 Black Comet levels, and since it is Shadow the Hedgehog, you spend a lot of that time either running forward at barely controllable speed to reach the end of the hero mission or inching around looking for gun troops so you can complete the dark mission. The stage also heavily relies on the flying saucer vehicle for most of its sections, slowing the pace down considerably. This isn't some deplorable disgrace, but it's not good either. Number 127. 3-3 from Sonic Frontiers. I have a vendetta against this level. When I first played Frontiers the day it came out, this was the cyberspace level I hated the most. Right from the start, I could tell it was a copy-paste of modern Sonic Sky Sanctuary from Generations, and believe me, we'll talk more about reused levels later in the list. But for now, this one is easily my least favorite because having a comparison as direct as this shows off how poorly Frontiers handles compared to Generations. That game had a real flow to its movement and stage hazards. Everything in Frontiers is much slower paced and is really clunky, making it hard to outrun the final crumbling platforming section that was effortless in Generations. I could barely jump off of this swing to the next one, which was also effortless back in 2011. As I'll go more in depth on later in the list, reusing stages like this opens the door up for an unfavorable comparison, and since this level gave me so much grief on the first go-around compared to its source material that I've played countless times, I think this level's trash. Number 126. 4-3 from Sonic Frontiers. Fully original stages in Frontiers aren't automatically better, though. 4-3 is such a mess of assets. I actually got this level confused for 4-8, which appeared lower on the list. But I would say this level is better than that one because there are segments where you're playing for longer than a couple of seconds and have to jump around and stuff. And the stage lasts about 90 seconds instead of 30, but you spend most of that runtime on springs and swings pulling you every which way, and then the stage unceremoniously ends out of nowhere. It was very unsatisfactory stuff, so I ranked it pretty low. Number 125. 4-5 from Sonic Frontiers. Another original stage that could have gotten more points, but I don't really care to play it, and the design is pretty basic. There are huge lanes with spikes and grind rails in the sky, and you go forward for about a minute, and that'll basically be it for the stage. Jumping off grind rails is one of the coolest things you can do in Frontiers, so the stage wins points for speed and platforming as a result, but not many because there's not much you can do with it because the stage ends right as it gets going. But the music is stellar in this one, which goes for just about every cyberspace stage, but I wanted to give credit where it was due. Number 124. Final Chase from Sonic Adventure 2. Without a doubt, the worst speed stage from Adventure 2 is Final Chase, Shadow's final stage and the last level of the Dark Side story. Which is funny because, spoilers, Sonic's Final Rush is one of the best in the game. But Final Chase is this gimmicky romp with these circular gravity pillars that draw you close to them, and the stage doesn't offer much in replayability because the gravity mechanics are so inconsistent. Losing an A rank to them is as frustrating as it gets. There are some cool jumps and skips in this level, but it does not redeem an otherwise mediocre level that is, as I said, definitely Adventure 2's worst speed stage. Number 123. White Acropolis from Sonic 06. White Acropolis is a major thing going against it right at the start. Sonic's version starts with this barely functioning snowboard section. It's some of the worst gameplay in a Sonic game. It's slow, quick to turn, sometimes gets caught on nothing and can barely move. It sucks. But I think the parts where you explore the open ground at the end of Sonic's section and Shadow and Silver's too can be fun. It's an open space with many ways to engage with it and progress and find secret item boxes. Therefore, it's a stage I don't mind revisiting even with a terrible opening. The snowboard section and the overall controls of 06 net it a 0 for speed, but the platforming is well designed and laid out, and there's a reward for repeat runs, so that earns the stage a 3. Number 122. Flame Core from Sonic 06. I feel the same about Flame Core as I do White Acropolis, though this level doesn't have a snowboard. For Sonic and Shadow, the level is the midpoint of the story as they raid the volcano to fight Iblis and get the Chaos Emerald to return to the present day. But for the Silver campaign, it's the climactic final stage. It features 06's janky controls, atrocious combat, and abysmal Knuckles and Rouge sections, but I think the main bulk of the stage has enough pathways, set pieces, and platforming to where it earns enough points in the platforming and replayability categories. The design is strong enough to recognize it despite what game it's in. Number 121. Radical Train from Sonic 06. And this level is more of the same. It's kind of an event stage in 06, since this is the part where all three main characters are in the same stage at the same time, and it leads to a big confrontation afterwards. The stage itself earns points for simplicity. As all three characters, you just run and jump through it, navigating conveyor belts and weighted platforms, in a stage that also isn't too long either. So it's one of 06's better paced levels as all three characters. Sonic having to do a mock speed section that's one of the easiest in the game, which is good because these parts are some real lives drainers. But yeah, I think this is an alright stage. Number 120. The Cauldron from Sonic and the Black Knight. This is a level I'd love to give more points to because the setting and music is so cool. You're near a volcano at night and the lava is flying up and you need to dodge it. But I find the beginning of this level to be a bit of a pain because it relies too much on stopping and starting to wait for a chance to jump. In a game that should be all about high-octane action, this can be a bit of a pace killer, as can slowly scaling the wall towards the end. But when replaying Black Knight, I don't mind revisiting this one. I think its best moments, like riding a rock through the magma, are more than good enough to earn the stage a 3. Number 119. Titanic Plains from Sonic and the Black Knight. This is another level where I assumed it would rank higher when giving the scores out, but when you play it, not much really happens. Like all the music in Black Knight, it gives the stage a swashbuckling quality as you slash your way through enemies, but there are not many flashy set pieces in this one. You just gotta hope the Soul Surge and Spin Slash is satisfying enough for you to enjoy the level, which is again, the biggest issue with Black Knight from a design standpoint. It's definitely enough for me to give the stage a 3, but the level itself doesn't really do much on its own to earn many more points besides that. Number 118. Crystal Cave from Sonic and the Black Knight. This level is similar to the ones from the previous two rankings, but I think it comes with enough visual variety and set pieces to stand out, like attacking enemies while avoiding crumbling stalactites and climbing up rock walls. Also having parts that take place outside for some visual variety. There's alternate routes you can reach by jumping on mushrooms on the ground, and you get chased by some bats halfway through. It's a short stage, but they crammed a lot into it. It still has the main issues from the other Black Knight levels, but it's enjoyable. Number 117. Skeleton Dome from Sonic and the Secret Rings. The Skeleton Dome was home to some of the worst missions in the game, don't get me wrong, but again, for the Storybook games, I'm just looking at the main level. For Skeleton Dome, I think it's a pretty cool location. The ground is covered in all the dust from all the bones, and the stage is also decorated in skeletal architecture, and you need to react really fast to crumbling ground. It's some of the best displays of speed and platforming in Sonic and the Secret Rings. The stage has a variety of platforming and timing-based sections like walking on narrow pathways and avoiding spike balls in your path to King Solomon. It does enough to stand out amongst a roster of pretty unique stages. Number 116. Dinosaur Jungle from Sonic and the Secret Rings. Dinosaur Jungle is the first time in this game where you can clearly see that Sonic Team was taking liberties with the Arabian Nights setting, but in execution, I think it works really well. Dinosaur Jungle is one of the most standout locations in the game. It is, as the name says, a forest level filled with different kinds of dinosaurs, some that chase you and try to kill you, and others you jump on top of and run along. As a fully maxed out Sonic, you can outrun the opening dinosaur chase like it's nothing, and also speed break right through this part where the big one tries to eat you, so there's a lot to enjoy upon the replay. It doesn't do enough to be my favorite Secret Rings level, we'll see that later on the list, but this level's pretty cool and has a lot of fast-paced segments that warrant it getting this high on the list. Number 115. Network Terminal from Sonic Forces. While not a super complex stage, it is from Forces after all, Network Terminal is on the more enjoyable side of the Forces spectrum. With grind rails and swings, you could say the 3D section here is largely automated, and I couldn't fault that logic, but I believe the variety of paths here and the red rings that are on the way each warrant a replay, and it does give you something to react to and engage with. And I thought it was really cool how you play the level outside and then get inside the facility and the music changes. The indoor portion is largely 2D, but I think the stage is definitely alright. Number 114. Egg Gate from Sonic Forces. This is definitely the best modern Sonic stage in the game. It's nothing mind-blowing compared to the stages of Unleashed, Colors, and Generations, however, it is a level that has elements that compare to those games. Specifically, towards the beginning with the first 3D section that gives you different paths to go along in different directions that actually have you play while running on them. None of that fake-ass Lost Valley automated shit here. Egg Gate is still not a great level or anything. The final segment, for example, is a total QTE nothing burger, and the part before that is this. But in the 3D sections, I think this level is alright and not a total joke like some of the lowest ranking Forces stages. Number 113. Camelot Castle from Sonic and the Black Knight. This level is a lot like the other Black Knight stages in that not much is going on, but I think the uniqueness of it allows it to stand so high above some of the others. The visual novelty of Secret Rings and Black Knight allow both games to stand out from the crowd, but in Camelot Castle, I just think it's a really unique visual as you're not only running through this medieval castle, but it's also a bustling community. You run through towns, sewers, and ride on zip lines and stuff. It's an exciting stage that's almost always a good time to revisit. It doesn't do much in the way of challenge, but it's a cool level nevertheless. And at one point in this run, I actually got a 36-hit combo streak going. It was pretty damn satisfying. Number 112. Cosmic Fall from Shadow the Hedgehog. In this stage, Shadow's on the Space Colony arc, only it's inexplicably falling apart and you need to get through it. The stage didn't earn many points in the speed category because so much of it includes waiting on platforms to rise and fall and riding on transport machines, but the amount of platforming definitely earns points. Some of the segments in this stage feature difficult timing-based platforming that you don't tend to see in Sonic games nowadays without going into overt frustration, and I think it's commendable. It being challenging makes it stick out in my mind as a Shadow stage I wouldn't mind replaying. The banger music is another highlight too. Number 111. Cryptic Castle from Shadow the Hedgehog. While I wouldn't give this level much thought in terms of replayability, there are some segments here where you go really fast, like the chase by a giant spider-looking thing at the end. You go so quickly here that you can outrun the monster within seconds. That was pretty cool. The stage gets this high because there are a lot of different routes and perilous platforming to get to them, like homing attack chains over pits and triangle jumps to get from wall to wall. It certainly is a stage where you're kept engaged for the most part, but it does have a few too many segments where you stop and watch the gameplay itself in the least exciting way imaginable, like riding these pumpkin balloons, but it's not an awful stage by any means. It has enough good qualities to almost make it to the top 100. Number 110. Sky Road from Sonic Lost World. For me, Sky Road is largely held back by it being a Sonic Lost World level. I don't find this game's handling of speed or platforming to be that fun, so I don't plan on replaying it, but having said that, Sky Road Act 1 is when Lost World tests you on every skill you've gained thus far. Super speed sections, homing attacks over pits, enemies you kill with the charged homing attack, perilous parkour, using the Eagle Wisp without dying, different routes to take. It is Lost World putting its best foot forward. This was a fine 3D level, but then Acts 2 and 3 are all 2D, and Act 4 is half 2D, and the parts that are 3D have nothing to do with the gameplay of Act 1. So for that reason, I rank this level lower than the 3 Lost World stages that you'll see higher on the list. Number 109. Planet Wisp from Sonic Generations. It pains me to do this, but the final level of Sonic Generations is pretty awful. by Generations standards. This is the first time Generations has made it on the list, and believe me, we will not be seeing this game again for a long time. But Planet Wisp, I don't know what happened with this level, it is a mess. The stage only earns 3 points because the opening 3D section is fantastic. Gorgeous visuals, diverse routes with different skills tested, reaction-based platforming. In this opening section, the stage has it all. But once you reach the tower climb, it completely shits the bed. Modern Sonic must get on these construction blocks and sit on them while waiting for your chance to jump and or use the rocket wisp to go up higher. But then this goes on for like 3 minutes, maybe more. Both acts of Planet Wisp are a bizarre outlier in Generations' level roster because literally every other stage in this game is near perfection, but then, I don't know, maybe Sonic Team didn't have enough time to stick the landing, or they didn't really get what to bring over from Planet Wisp in its original incarnation because that was only a year old when Generations came out. I have no idea, but this level is pretty bad, but good enough to beat over 50 other bad to mediocre stages, so there's that. Number 108. Rail Canyon / Bullet Station from Sonic Heroes. Have to say, credit to Sonic Heroes, this is the game's debut on the list and we're almost at entry 100. As I said during the rules section, if I think the 2 acts of a hero's zone are distinct enough to count separately, I will. It's not like Lost World or Colors where I don't have that much to say about the differing acts on their own, so they all got merged together. In the case of Heroes, I have a completely different opinion of Egg Fleet and Final Fortress, for example, so doing them together would be a disservice to one of them and a favor to the other. So they're best off counted separately. But for Rail Canyon and Bullet Station, I saw that I ranked both of them the same in every category, so we can quickly go through it. Most of the stage takes place on grind rails, and while grinding had yet to become fully automated by Heroes, it doesn't really have the fast-paced, balancing gameplay that the mechanic had in Sonic Adventure 2, so a lot of it is just spamming the B button again and again. The parts on solid ground are good, and there are many chances for cool and exciting speedrunning skips, so I can enjoy playing the level, but a lot of the time if I'm replaying Heroes, runs can die here if I get bored because the levels are long and can get repetitive. Like in Bullet Station where you go inside a train twice, or get launched from a cannon twice as well. So it's my least favorite level in Heroes, even more so than Bingo Highway, which we'll discuss later. Number 107. 4-1 from Sonic Frontiers. This level is a janky-ass copy of Metal Harbor from Sonic Adventure 2. The adventure games are not known for their stability, but this rendition is somehow far worse. I'll run off ledges when the dash panel was supposed to send me into a scripted sequence, the controls in the board segment were so much worse than the original, the climb at the end was slow and awkward, it just pales in comparison to the original stage. Number 106. 1-1 from Sonic Frontiers. This is a slow and janky copy of Windmill Isle Act 1 from Sonic Unleashed. Since both have boosting mechanics, it makes for a really easy comparison, where you can see Sonic was faster and more fun to fight enemies with in Unleashed compared to Frontiers, which makes it all really slow. It's a harmless level, being the first bit of gameplay in Frontiers, but I wouldn't want to replay it because it's a less good version of a good stage. Number 105. 4-4 from Sonic Frontiers. At least this one is original, but nothing's really happening besides automated sequences like springs, dash rings, and grind rails. There are some segments of 3D platforming, but nothing stand out, and the speed just feels low because of how Frontiers controls. It is original, but I wouldn't want to replay it. Some of the original stages in Frontiers just end up feeling like assets strung together, not a level you play through, and this is another example of that. Number 104. Westopolis from Shadow the Hedgehog. The opening level of this game sets the stage for the rest of the game because you either run forward at light speed, barely doing anything, or inch around looking for targets either on behalf of Black Doom or Sonic. Sounds negative, but I don't think Westopolis is a bad stage, it's just not great. It drops you right in the middle of the war zone, which is fitting for the story of Shadow the Hedgehog. I just wish the level had less bare-bones platforming so it could earn more points. Credit to the level. To fully complete Shadow the Hedgehog, you need to run through this game 10 times and make different choices throughout to unlock every ending, and each run begins at Westopolis. But despite that, I don't really feel like this level gets that boring or brutally repetitive even after 9 or 10 playthroughs of it. So for that reason, I was willing to give it a 1 for replayability. Number 103. Prison Island from Shadow the Hedgehog. I was willing to give Prison Island points because I think this is a decent stage to play through. I like the continuity here, how it takes place on the destroyed Prison Island which got blown up in Sonic Adventure 2, and these are the toxic ruins left behind. The stage has platforming and easy to complete mission objectives for both the hero and dark side missions. because the collectibles and enemies aren't hiding in obscure spots. It does feel somewhat fast, and I don't mind revisiting it. However, it lost a lot of points because throughout most of it, you'll be riding on this floating saucer thing in order to avoid taking damage from the acidic ground. The saucer doesn't move as fast as Shadow and doesn't have the mobility Shadow has in platforming, which isn't much in this game anyway, so it's not getting more than a 3, but I don't hate it. Number 102. Starlight Carnival from Sonic Colors. I thought all the Colors levels were going to rank highly in this video, but Starlight Carnival was one where I couldn't justify giving it a lot of points. The spectacle is great, as Sonic runs in these light trails with beautiful brightly lit starships in the background. However, there isn't much in the way of interactivity going on in this stage. Most of the 3D sections are super short-lived, mostly consisting of watching the game play itself or quick-step spamming. The 2D sections are where most of the meat is, and a lot of these sections aren't even that fun, like bouncing on a spring that goes up as you need to avoid the obstacles that come up. I don't dislike Starlight Carnival by any means, but I just think it's not very good at what the video is judging the levels for. So for that reason, Starlight Carnival just barely misses out in the top 100. Number 101. Spaceport from Sonic Forces. Now, we've finally reached the last crop of Forces levels that have somehow made their way this high in the list. As I said much earlier, I think the Avatar levels are decent at best in Forces, and these rankings reflect that. Spaceport is the first one. There are many different opportunities to use Wispons here, creating replay value. The pacing is decent, and there are cool moments like grappling away from a train. It's nothing genre-busting, but for the opening act of the Avatar's gameplay, I certainly think it gets the job done. Number 100. Prison Hall from Sonic Forces. This level earns the same amount of points as the previous one for many of the same reasons. It houses one of the better quick-step sections in Forces as it's crammed and requires you to react fast, some routes need timing to get up to, and the level doesn't overstay its welcome while also not ending in 40 seconds. Number 99. Null Space from Sonic Forces. This is one of the game's most popular stages, and for good reason. The double boost section right at the beginning sets a bad precedent, but for the rest of it, it actually has diverging routes that take you to completely different parts of the stage, and they all need different Wispons to reach, and that makes for a stage you'd actually want to replay. It's still pretty basic, but I think the level's enjoyable enough. Number 98. Capital City from Sonic Forces. Story-wise, this level has one of the funniest moments where Knuckles launches Operation Big Wave, where 99% of their troops get murdered by Infinite and nobody really gives a damn about it. But when just looking at the stage, this is my favorite Forces level because the Avatar is trying to reach Infinite and he keeps messing with your perspective with massive illusions that switch up how you play. Maybe it isn't littered with diverging routes or whatever, but it is a stage that sticks out in my mind from the awful Forces level roster by keeping the variety up in what you're doing while playing. But with that, thankfully, Forces is off the goddamn list. The second game to be done entirely. It should consider itself lucky. I was trying to be fair with the rankings, but if it were up to me and how much I enjoyed playing the game itself, this game would have been gone long ago. It is garbage. See my 2022 review for more info. Number 97. Shrouded Forest from Sonic and the Black Knight. The later levels in this game are, for the most part, the best ones. I've always had fond memories of Shrouded Forest because it was the first of the final stages I played and discovered that you could play as Lancelot or Shadow and thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen in the first playthrough. Blasting through the stage with Chaos Punishment is why this level earns almost a perfect score in speed, but there isn't much in the way of platforming, and what is there is repeated multiple times. It's not an all-time classic or anything, but it's good. Number 96. The Great Megalith from Sonic and the Black Knight. This level's pretty short, all things considered, but it's such a great demonstration of what Black Knight is good at, which made me rank it so high. It just feels like a swashbuckling romp as you tear through the fortress at high speed, rescuing prisoners with this sick music in the background. This level's perfect for Sonic's spin/maneuver, and it makes the level really satisfying to play. So therefore, I ranked it this high. Number 95. Wave Ocean from Sonic 06. It's a shame Wave Ocean is Sonic's first level in 06 because it might just be the jankiest to play. However, when just looking at the design, I think Wave Ocean's a pretty well-designed stage. Say it with me. There's multiple paths that offer meaningful new ways to get through the level, which makes it worth replaying, and even some speedy moments worthy of a 4 out of 9. Just remember to jump when Sonic says so or you'll die. Also sucks you have to play as Tails and Mach Speed Sonic here, as we all know how functional those mechanics are, but still, I think it's a pretty playable stage with a lot of upsides. Number 94. Silent Forest from Sonic Lost World. I think the main 3D act of Silent Forest is pretty good. I like how grinding works in Lost World where you can freely jump between the different rails that aren't directly next to each other. It gives you a lot to react to in the swamp sections of this level. And there are also great chances to use Sonic's parkour abilities for different routes. I just wish there was more fully 3D levels in this zone so that I could keep complimenting the game, But instead, the only other 3D level in this zone is an icy underground cavern, which doesn't succeed at any of those previous positives, and why is there an ice level in the forest world? In the same game that had an ice world and made one of its levels a casino? I don't know, but number 93. Desert Ruins from Sonic Lost World. It seems that I think both Lost Worlds are at their best at the beginning. Desert Ruins only has 2 3D stages, one of which is the Honeycomb Highway Mach Speed section, which can be a fun stage to run through and react to obstacles on, and the main act gives you a lot of open space to test out your spin dash boosting powers, wisps for red rings, and other collectibles along the way. It's certainly nothing special, but it's a decent zone to play through, even in its 2D sections. Except Desert Ruins, that level sucks. But the rest of them are alright, although I was never able to figure out how you were supposed to climb these vine things when inside the pyramid, but alas and alack, it got a 4. Number 92. Windy Hill from Sonic Lost World. Windy Hill has the most 3D action of any Lost World zone, with 2 fully 3D stages and 1 half 3D stage. In it, you can go fast with your spin dash powers, parkour for alternate routes in both Acts 1 and 2, and since the cave in Act 2 has lower sections with parkour and higher sections with wisp powers, it's a pretty well-rounded zone, all things considered. I just don't like the game, and I'm glad I don't have to play it again. For now. But anyway, with that said, that's all 7 zones from Lost World covered, which is good because I'm really running out of stuff to say about this game. So that means, no more Lost World, this game really sucks, and now it's off my list. And not a moment too soon. Number 91. Casino Park / Bingo Highway from Sonic Heroes. I would have imagined this level ranking much lower when I conceived the video, and that's because these 2 stages are pretty infamous for the pinball sections. Unlike every other pinball section in series history where you get a view of the entire board at once, these ones require you to steer the characters on the bingo board and the movement is super stiff. However, I think the level is pretty enjoyable for the most part. There are some awkward pinball segments for sure, like the end of Bingo Highway with all the pits, but others have good opportunities for skips, and the parts that are on the ground can be rewarding too, with chances for Rocket Excel jumps and light dash trails. In all 4 stories, this was never a stage I would dread revisiting, so I'd say a 4 out of 9 is fair. Number 90. Gun Fortress from Shadow the Hedgehog. One of Shadow's final stages, and it's a pretty alright one. The sense of speed here is the best part. The controls are always an issue in this game, but the level is mostly straight lines. Shadow raids the gun base alongside the Black Arms, and you spend most of the time flying through getting dark points to fill up the Chaos Blast gauge, which gives you infinite ammo as you tear through the halls. As I said, there's not much going on in this level besides straight lines, and the occasional interesting segment like running from the POV of the security cam, but I think the level is satisfying enough to earn this spot on the list. Number 89. Air Fleet from Shadow the Hedgehog. This level has some of the most involved platforming in the game. You're at a gun air hangar, and you either need to help Tails protect the President's plane or help the Black Arms destroy the President's getaway plane. Don't ask any questions, it's a long story. But no matter what mission you play, you're gonna have to do a lot, from jumping on the outside of the craft with the pits below you, avoiding lasers, or picking different paths to either fight gun troops or Black Arm soldiers to build up dark and hero points respectively. Air Fleet's a decently fun stage, all things considered. Number 88. Dragon's Lair from Sonic and the Black Knight. Originally, this was like 10 entries lower on the list, but I figured I'd bump it up. Dragon's Lair has some of the most platforming in Black Knight, as basic as it may be, but it's also a stage where Sonic fights a dragon and slices a crystal off of its face. That's a cool as fuck set piece. I fell into the pit and died a lot playing this game as a kid, and I do the same thing as an impatient adult, but still, I think it's a neat stage that's worthy of being this far into the list. Number 87. Molten Mine from Sonic and the Black Knight. This is another basic level, but I think it's pretty well rounded by Black Knight standards. You have grinding on rails, walking on narrow ledges, avoiding molten magma rocks. It's got everything in a relatively short runtime. It's also a great visual, as is standard in the Storybook games. They gave Sonic Team the chance to do level ideas they normally wouldn't be able to in Sonic's world, and this is an example. Number 86. Pirate Storm from Sonic and the Secret Rings. This level has some of the most frustrating extra missions in the game, but again, main act only, and Pirate Storm has a lot going for it. By Secret Ring standards, the platforming can get pretty involved and pretty tricky too, like how these boxes will keep going underwater and coming back up, and you need to jump on them with the right timing. And the stage just has so many awesome set pieces, like getting launched out of a cannon and riding the missile into the sky, or surfboarding through a massive tidal wave. Pirate Storm really sets itself apart from the rest in those areas. Number 85. Evil Foundry from Sonic and the Secret Rings. Just saying the name of this level makes it sound pretty cool. Sonic and Shara raid the Factory of Evil, and while there, you're gonna have to avoid machinery and lava and spike balls and giant robots cobbled together from different machine parts. It's a stage where perhaps I rank it this high from visual design alone, but the stage design flows from the original visuals and creates a memorable level that can be fun to play as you react to all incoming obstacles. Number 84. Eggman Land from the Wii version of Sonic Unleashed. Credit to the Wii version of Sonic Unleashed, it was the second to last game to debut on the list. The only other game that has yet to appear is the actual Unleashed. That's because there are no stinkers in this level roster. But as you'll see, Sonic Unleashed, as I call it, is a game I don't rank super high across the list because it's Sonic Unleashed for the Wii. I just always think of it as an inferior game to the HD version despite its decent level roster, and I played both of them as a kid. Eggman Land ranked the lowest though. It has good elements, like moments to take daring leaps and jumps to skip parts of the stage and different paths and stuff, but compared to the HD Eggman Land, this act really is short and feels very empty, like very sterile and bland, not a balls-to-the-wall madhouse like Eggman Land was in the other Sonic Unleashed. But it's a decent final stage, just not setting the world on fire. Number 83. Sky Deck from Sonic Adventure. This is the first Sonic stage from SA1 to get on the list, and it's definitely the weakest one. I don't like how Sky Deck involves so much waiting for things to happen or appear so you can progress, or shimmying across things, and worst of all, the supremely janky anti-gravity mechanics in the stage's final section. But since this is SA1 control, I can give points in the platforming department because the spin dash jumping in this game always leads to fun results, which is why I felt comfortable putting the level this high in the list. Number 82. Cannon's Core from Sonic Adventure 2. I almost didn't put the final stage of Adventure 2 on the list, since you spend most of it as the characters not focused on speed. However, Sonic's portion at the end was really good. I think the level leading up to it was an appropriate final challenge for Tails, Eggman, Knuckles, and Rouge, and the culmination in Sonic's section was great. You need to reach the Cannon's Core on the Arc to stop the Chaos Emeralds, and so the segment feels appropriately intense. But my favorite thing about Cannon's Core is this time-stopping thing that the stage has. At this point in the stage, if you spin dash into it and outrun it, the freeze timer will break and the stage will be frozen for the rest of the level, so you can just easily run right past the water slide section at the end. For those reasons and more, it's a memorable final stage that leads into the franchise's best finale. Number 81. Crisis City from Sonic 06. These next two entries really demonstrate the scale and scope 06 was trying to have. Crisis City, despite its obnoxious snowboard section at the beginning and a madhouse of a Mach Speed section at the end, I just think that the stage design in Crisis City's main act was compelling enough that I had to rank it this high. Paths that reward exploration, tight platforming, good content skips, it's great design. In a game with good control, Crisis City would really flourish, and good thing, thanks to the fan game, we know what that looks like. Number 80. Kingdom Valley from Sonic 06. Take everything I said about Crisis City and amplify it with a really dynamic main section that's littered with hidden paths and goodies that are varied and fun to explore for. And with no snowboard, and with the best Mach Speed section in the game since it's the least frustrating one. There are parts where you ride on wind trails, you ride an eagle into the different sections, you crash through glass, you see giant structures get knocked over. It's a level with a lot going on in every character's story. This is the stage on the game's front cover and the title screen, and it just feels so grand to play in each character's story. It's the best level in 06 if you ask me. But with that said, that was the last 06 level yet to be ranked, which means 06 is now off the list. I guess the game should consider itself fortunate enough to have made it to the top 80 at all. Because this game is not very good, that much we all already know. But I've always thought 06 levels were compellingly designed, and like I said for Crisis City, Project 06 proves that good gameplay would really do a lot for them. But now it's time to move on from this game. Number 79. Lethal Highway from Shadow the Hedgehog. There's not much to the level design in this stage, but I think it can make for a fun level nevertheless. Shadow and Sonic chase down the Black Arm's getaway tank and need to destroy it before it gets away. And along the way, you race down the highway at high speeds, shooting the tank. Sometimes the Black Arms will blow up the road and you have to take a detour where you fight enemies and platform back up to the main highway. I'm not going to say it's a blast to play or anything, it is Shadow the Hedgehog control, but I think it's pretty cool. Number 78. Circus Park from Shadow the Hedgehog. This is another stage where getting to go fast happens more often than the typical Shadow level. It's also a colorful visual display, as it's one of the Doctor's theme parks. Even with the mission requirements of collecting 400 rings or destroying 20 gun troops, I think they're easy to accomplish while keeping the pacing going. There are also cool circus-themed minigames like going through giant flame rings or shooting balloons for huge ring rewards. Very on-point stage gimmicks. Number 77. Digital Circuit from Shadow the Hedgehog. I can't give Digital Circuit a lot of points in speed or replayability since a lot of it is taking place on mostly automated light trails, but compared to Mad Matrix from way lower on the list, this level is a godsend. The parts that involve platforming are pretty good. Not as much waiting around as Mad Matrix, and neat stuff happens like homing attack trails where the last enemy will send Shadow dashing towards these light sources that lead to the next area. Digital Circuit is another one that isn't doing anything mind-blowing, but I don't think it makes for a bad run. Number 76. Casinopolis from Sonic Adventure. It was either this or Skydeck for my pick for Adventure 1's worst Sonic stage, but I thought I'd put this one higher up for one reason. The gimmick of this stage is that Sonic needs 400 rings before he can reach the Chaos Emerald at the end. To do that, you need to earn them on a pinball table. If that was all the stage had to offer, I'd put it pretty low on the list. However, if you intentionally strike out with almost no rings, you get sent to Casinopolis' sewer system. This is regular Sonic gameplay, and there's an abundance of rings in this section, easily letting you get to the requirement while getting to run around as Sonic. It's not complex or interesting enough level design to rank super high, but a cool secret stage like this is why the level earned a 4 out of 9. Number 75. 1-4 from Sonic Frontiers. We're gonna fly right through these next few, and you'll understand why pretty quickly. 1-4 from Frontiers is a jankier copy of Green Hill Zone Act 2 from Sonic Generations. Everything good about this level is from another game, only now it's in a game that doesn't even play half as good. Number 74. 1-5 from Sonic Frontiers. This level is a jankier copy of Chemical Plant Act 2 from Sonic Generations. Everything good about this level is from another game, only now it's in a game that doesn't even play half as well. I find that you can't even enjoy the segments nearly as much as you could in the original game. Number 73. 2-2 from Sonic Frontiers. This level is a copy of Dragon Road Day Act 3 from Sonic Unleashed. I'm not going to say it's jankier, Frontiers' platforming control is certainly better than Sonic Unleashed, and while the stage has platforming and some speed to it, I'm not replaying it. I don't feel much drive to replay these smaller cyberspace levels anyway, but definitely not ones that reuse levels like this. Number 72. 2-4 from Sonic Frontiers. This level is a slower copy of Radical Highway from Sonic Adventure 2. Not even the full thing, just a brief snippet of it. Thankfully, they patched in a spin dash for this game which allows you to move quickly in cyberspace because otherwise the movement of this level pales in comparison to the iconic original stage. Number 71. 2-6 from Sonic Frontiers. This level is a slower and jankier copy of Skyrail from Sonic Adventure 2, which is a crying shame because I thought Skyrail was one of the coolest levels in that game as you move super fast and can get done in record time. Like all the other cyberspace levels, you get a really sick music track playing in the background, but I can't get past how much of this level is a downgrade to play compared to the OG. Number 70. 3-1 from Sonic Frontiers. This level is a slower and jankier copy of Green Forest from Sonic Adventure 2. It has one of my favorite stage themes in the game, but everything fun about the original level is not here. No timer, no fast set pieces, just slow and dull. No thank you. I'll go more in depth onto this when we reach the final Frontiers stage on the list, but even if these aren't awful levels to play, I'm not going to give inferior copies good scores. I just don't want to do that. These reused stages all got clumped together because I don't find them awful like the Sky Sanctuary Generations copy from lower on the list, but I just don't like them. Number 69. 4-7 from Sonic Frontiers. This was actually original level design, and it didn't feel totally haphazard like some of the original stages that ranked lower on the list. It's not going to set the world on fire, but it is a stage that is 3D, and original, and doesn't feel like a mess. You can get some decent speed, and you have to jump around a bit, and that's all I can really ask for with some of these cyberspace stages, it seems, so it got this high on the list. Number 68. 4-9 from Sonic Frontiers. For the final cyberspace stage, they also made it original and fully 3D as you switch between the skateboard and running on the ground. Unlike the Metal Harbor copy, this board section has enough open space to not feel like a chore to control with these wide maneuvers. And the 3D platforming section gets the job done too, which is why I ranked it this high on the list. Number 67. Windy Valley from Sonic Adventure. This is a stage I thought would rank higher because I have a lot of nostalgia for playing this stage when I first got Sonic Adventure, but the level really isn't that great. Its most enjoyable moment is at the beginning. Here you can get a couple of different options to play around with, like homing attack chains or just running on the ground. But this segment ends before you know it as Sonic then climbs up a tornado and gets spat into the final section, which is largely linear paths. There is a great sense of speed, but not much to do with it in this stage. The prototype version of Windy Valley, installable on PC as a mod, really goes to show how open-ended the stage could have been, and soured my perspective on the final build of Windy Valley. Number 66. Twinkle Park from Sonic Adventure. This is another level I'd love to give more points to. but the stage just has too many sections where you don't play to give it a great score. The opening is a part where you go ride carts to a space backdrop, and while the music is a serene remix of Panic Puppet Zone from Sonic 3D Blast, that's not enough for this part to feel all that fun. Then the actual castle theme park section also brings with it a long scene of Sonic on a roller coaster where you don't do anything. Cool visual, but not enough substance. The actual part where you play is fantastic. Within these brief rooms, the player's ability to spin dash jump and skip whole stage chunks is amazing, which is why it got this high on the list, but there's too much nothing at the beginning to overlook. Number 65. Glyphic Canyon from Shadow the Hedgehog. At this point, there isn't much else to say about Shadow levels, but this one gets to be this high on the list because the hero and villain missions are easy to complete without having to backtrack and look through nooks and crannies. The stage also gets the pace up as you run through obstacles and features basic but decent platforming. Whenever I revisit Glyphic Canyon, I'm bound to have an alright time with it. Number 64. Levitated Ruin from Sonic and the Secret Rings. I've always been partial to this one. Sonic and Shara are on top of a series of giant flying manta rays with stone structures on top of them. It's a great visual, and you get to react to obstacles like wind tipping over pillars that become debris to avoid. And you fight these gargoyles that come to life, and then you chase them on these light trails against the sunset sky. It's a really unique atmosphere for a Sonic stage, and the usual electric guitar and drum combo is accompanied by a piano for the music, and I think it's stellar. Number 63. Night Palace from Sonic and the Secret Rings. The final level of Secret Rings is an easy pick for the game's best stage. Night Palace is the Eraser Djinn's fortress, and Sonic enters in style with the CG cutscene. The level itself has a lot of cool stuff like riding a magic carpet against the night sky, and parts where you get taken to a parallel dimension where spears destroy the glass you run on. It's a fitting final test of every skill Secret Rings has been teaching you thus far, also being the perfect playground for a fully maxed out Sonic. The music, again, being a total bop. Throughout the whole list, I've been kind of grading Secret Rings and Black Knight on a curve. The platforming and speed will obviously not be as good in a game where you don't have full control of Sonic, but for a spectacle-based reaction platformer, I think this one's a good stage for what it's worth. Which is a nice note to end on, as this is Secret Rings' final appearance on the list. Number 62. Iron Jungle from Shadow the Hedgehog. I've always found this level pretty satisfying. The platforming is, once again, really basic as blocks move up and down, but it is there, and the missions are also easy to work with. The Dark mission sees you destroy gun mechs, which are in abundance and fun to blow away with the Gatling gun. And the Hero mission is to destroy Eggman's balloon, which can also be fun as you need to catch up with it and then destroy it with whatever ammo you can get your hands on. The grind rails are really fast in this game, and the stage houses some of the only moments in Shadow where spin dash jumping is useful for skips, so yeah, this one wasn't bad either. Number 61. 1-7 from Sonic Frontiers. This level is a much slower paced version of City Escape from Sonic Adventure 2. Everything from homing attacking to swinging to grinding or light dashing is either more delayed or more automated than it was in the original. It's not as unfun to play as some of those other ones, since they do have little bits that weren't in the original, like trick rings, and it is long enough to where you felt like you played a full stage, but also short enough to where you don't get bored of Frontiers mechanics, so I put it this high on the list. Number 60. Crazy Gadget from Sonic Adventure 2. This has always been my least favorite Sonic stage in the game, but to give props, it's not poorly designed. I just don't care to revisit it much. Where it goes wrong is how many parts require abilities like the Lightspeed dash over a pit, where all the actions are mapped to the same button, meaning that the action button might just trigger a different move and kill you. But the level has a great flow and manages to use anti-gravity mechanics in a way that isn't frustrating. The final room really got me stumped as a kid though, but pro tip, if you want to skip most of it, you can jump from this point here, and bounce attack to where you hit the switch, and then spin dash jump to the goal ring. It saves you a lot of time. Number 59. Arid Sands from Sonic Unleashed. With the Wii version of Unleashed's levels, my take on them is usually going to be either, this is a cool stage in terms of layout but not that fun thanks to the controls, or good level but doesn't have anything the HD version doesn't have, or both. In this case, it's a mix of both. Arid Sands on the Wii showcases one of the best things about Unleashed. The ranking timer is demanding, so you have to explore those alternate routes to find the fastest shortcuts, but at the same time, there isn't much to react to in the stage itself compared to the HD version, and the controls of Unleashed are pretty stiff if you ask me. So it's a good level, fun to explore and replay, but issues inherent to this game drag it down a bit. Number 58. Lost World from Sonic Adventure. This stage scoring higher than Windy Valley kinda surprised me. But when I stopped and thought about it, it made sense. A stage like Windy Valley does make for the quicker replay, but Lost World has a lot going on that's fun and worthwhile. When I think of this level, my first thought is the part at the beginning with the snake and the rising water. If you don't know what you're doing, it can be cumbersome to get around this section, but it does have great opportunities for spin dash jumping. as do most level segments in this stage. Especially the giant room at the end where you scale the walls. If you know where to aim, you can just skip over the whole room, which is super satisfying. Segments like this make Lost World really fun to play. The stage has everything from fast set pieces to slower parts that can become fast with practice, so for that reason, I thought it was worth getting this high on the list. Number 57. Knight's Passage from Sonic and the Black Knight. This is a standout stage from Black Knight. For starters, it's the first of the stages you play after the fake-out final boss and ending. So I was already pretty surprised to come back to the game after some time and finding more content than I thought there was before. But then, Knight's Passage just has some of the best designs in the game, like plenty of room for spin slashing and such, which I've been over before. But then, I also really like these parts with the rushing water. You might think you have to jump up and wait for it to pass, but you can slash through the waves with your sword, which is pretty damn cool if I do say so myself. And the music gives the stage a sense of urgency as Sonic and the Knights of the Round Table have to escape the castle as it's being corrupted. It's a cool stage concept that leads to good execution, and for that reason, Knight's Passage is my favorite level in Sonic and the Black Knight, which means the game is now off the list. It had an interesting spread of levels that sat towards the bottom of the list, and now a level that almost made top 50. But it wasn't quite that good, so farewell to Black Knight. Number 56. Death Ruins from Shadow the Hedgehog. Funny name aside, I think this is a pretty cool stage. Shadow and Rouge are running through this poisonous forest as they try and fight off the Black Arms. While playing, there'll be fast loops, grind rails, which almost always means high-speed gameplay in Shadow, and decent platforming segments like wall running. I'm not hungering to replay it or anything, but for a Shadow the Hedgehog level, it's pretty good. Number 55. Sky Troops from Shadow the Hedgehog. This level was always one of my favorites from this game. It takes place in the same ground as Glyphic Canyon, only now the structures are floating in the sky. The Black Arms are fighting an air battle against Dr. Eggman's Egg Fleet. On either side, your mission is pretty simple. Destroy the Egg Fleet with cannons or destroy the Temple Crystals. Simple targets that couldn't be missed and a stage that can be fast to go through with chaos control. And I always like the music too, so I think it's worthy of almost making top 50. Number 54. Final Fortress from Sonic Heroes. This is the first level from Heroes that's separate from its other act, and for good reason. The preceding level is awesome and will be seen much higher on the list. But Final Fortress is a fine last level, because it still has multiple routes to play around with and reaction-based platforming like jumping off of a rail and doing the blue tornado to ride up a pole and skip a section and all that good stuff. But it can be really slow-paced with the combat sections and the big open space with switches to activate towards the end. And it also repeats the sequence with pressing a big self-destruct button twice, which makes me not really yearn to replay it, despite the fact that the level is certainly good, just not amazing. Number 53. Final Haunt from Shadow the Hedgehog. This is another of Shadow's final stages, and it was always one of my favorites. Shadow and Sonic are raiding the Black Comet to take the fight to Black Doom. Of the three levels that recycle the same stage layout, Final Haunt is easily my favorite because the atmosphere was always one I thought was cool. Running through as my two favorite Sonic characters bashing and shooting bad guys to unlock chaos control and fly over stuff, and spin dash jumping as much as possible so I can skip the parts that need the suction gun to pull walls out. Things like that made the level really satisfying. So I think the stage is enjoyable, even if it's not, like, amazing, which is why it's not on the top 50. Number 52. Final Egg from Sonic Adventure. Sonic's final level has some great moments in it, especially in the last section where there are some good opportunities for spin dash jump skips. The whole thing is a great climactic feeling as you raid the Doctor's base and hopefully put a stop to his schemes for good. However, I ranked the level low for the replayability because the beginning of the level has a few too many parts where you watch dash pads take you forward and wait around for really slow-moving platforms. I enjoy much of this stage, which is why it almost made top 50, but now, when loading up SA1, it's a gamble if I still feel like playing this level or not. It has good moments, but also some slow moments. Number 51. 1-2 from Sonic Frontiers. This level is a copy of Windmill Isle Act 2 from Sonic Unleashed. However, this level made it so much higher than the rest of the cyberspace copy trash because this level made it its own thing to such an extent that I never even noticed for the longest time. Each cyberspace level has its own objectives to complete and a time limit requirement for the highest rank. You're incentivized to do all that so you can get as many vault keys as possible, which you need to get to the Chaos Emeralds on each island. 1-2 is the only stage in the entire game that makes the time limit pretty damn strict. Players have been saying since the game came out that they were playing this one over and over again to master it to get that S rank. And while I don't like how cyberspace handles in Frontiers, I think this is easily one of the best ones because it was memorable. With a lot of these other ones, I had to go back and check which one it was before writing about it, but never 1-2. Everyone remembers this one, and for reasons that I think are entirely positive, which is why it almost made top 50. Number 50. Eggman Land from Sonic Unleashed. And now, Sonic Unleashed is the final game to debut on the list, and in the top 50 no less. This is the game's final stage, and they really brought their A-game. This is a hellish carnival that you need to survive with deadly roller coasters, quick reaction-based grind rail paths, killer quicktime events, conveyor belts of doom, and sections where you play as both daytime and nighttime Sonic to make sure both gameplay styles get one last showcase in the final stage. It's a nightmare gauntlet, and I mean that in the best way possible. The reason why it's not a perfect score for speed is because of how much time is spent as the werehog doing regular platforming, and the reason it didn't earn anything in the replayability category is because I usually don't even bother replaying it when loading up Unleashed. I run through the day stages and maybe some night ones, but Eggman Land is so long that trying to play it for the best rank will usually end in death halfway through, so I don't tend to come back to it. But I still love the stage for the challenge and the set piece, being the stage where Eggman achieved his long-standing series-wide goal of building Eggman Land. But I also want to say that in hindsight, I feel like Eggman Land, the level, kind of broke the series almost. This level is infamous amongst Sonic fans for being one of the longest, most difficult stretches of gameplay in the whole franchise. And they'd be right. I, however, find that to be a really cool and standout thing. I think it's a great final level, but I think Sonic Team took that criticism way too far to heart and never, ever made a Sonic stage that difficult again. The final stage of the next game was Terminal Velocity, a level that plays itself, which ranked near the bottom of the list. Planet Wisp from Generations was also a lame final level, ranking towards the bottom. Lava Mountain and Final Judgment from Lost World and Forces didn't get much mercy either. In fact, Final Judgment was a stage where I talked about how it was just a repetitive rehash of all the lamest boost Sonic tropes at their easiest. And that was the final level. I just think Eggman Land and its reception changed Sonic, but at least we got a cool stage out of it. Number 49. Power Plant from Sonic Heroes. In this level, I really appreciate how much space there is to use your moves, like Rocket Excel jumping up these ramps for huge height. I like how you can take different paths that use different team formations. I really enjoy how many skips there are as the speed-type character. I enjoy these tall rooms that have a bottom path with enemies and a top path you can take by not making mistakes in platforming. It's a really good level. It falters with how many elevator rides there are. They kind of drag the pace down, unfortunately, but everything else was good enough to reach the top 50. Number 48. Space Gadget from Shadow the Hedgehog. I've always appreciated the simplicity of this level. Shadow's back on the Space Colony arc, and to complete the hero mission, you need to beat Sonic to the Chaos Emerald at the end. It's one of the few times when Shadow just builds a linear track for you to run and jump through, and I think it works. Only a tiny amount of elevator sections, too. I ranked this level high because I just enjoyed this one part at the end where if you have Chaos Control while on the final grind rail, you can just fly over the entire final section in epic fashion. For that reason, I used to replay this stage a lot, trying to get enough hero points to be able to do that, so I've got a soft spot for the stage. Number 47. Lava Shelter from Shadow the Hedgehog. Much like the last level, Lava Shelter is basic. You get deeper and deeper into Eggman's fortress, and along the way, you need to grind on rails for huge speed boosts, and platform around rising lava waves. Take upper routes or lower routes, light dash on rings, go up fan currents. It's got a lot going for it in a pretty short runtime. I've always enjoyed playing this level, as it helps that the missions are easy to do, either activating unmissable generators or reach the goal ring. So no matter what ending you're doing in this level, you'll have a simple time with it and can enjoy the speed and platforming it does provide. Which is why this is the highest ranking stage from Shadow the Hedgehog. Have to say, the fact that a game that ranked so low as to be in the bottom 10 also made the top 50 was impressive, but regardless, that is it for Shadow the Hedgehog. Number 46. Green Hill from Sonic Adventure 2. So I guess this technically shouldn't count, but it's not DLC or an extra act of an existing stage, so I figured, why not? Sonic Adventure 2 was the 10th anniversary of Sonic, and to celebrate you unlock the stage that started it all as a reward for fully completing the game. Green Hill Zone reimagined in 3D, and I think it's a lot of fun to toy around with. It's not super long or anything, but it's fully 3D and has a lot of paths and platforms to explore. It's a fun stage, and it's funny that it's ranking this high in the list, beating out every stage from Shadow, 06, Secret Rings, Black Knight, both Lost Worlds, and Forces. Number 45. Pyramid Cave from Sonic Adventure 2. I actually had this stage a few entries lower, but I bumped it up because I think Pyramid Cave, despite its linearity, is a good level. Many segments see Sonic have to reach the end of a hall before the door closes, or else you have to do it again. A stage like Pyramid Cave showing how SA2 gets the most out of replayability. The extra missions feature more exploration, but in the main act, so much of it comes down to going as fast as possible and scoring as many points as you can. I don't think it's SA2's fastest or most free-flowing stage, given the parts where you stop for door puzzles, but it's a stage that I have a good time with every run. Number 44. Windmill Isle from Sonic Unleashed. This level sets up from the beginning that Unleashed on Wii is going to have a lot of fun levels. I just have an appreciation for the way that Unleashed, being slower than the HD version, puts a focus on multiple pathways. Windmill Isle demonstrates that really well with interconnected streets that flow really well together. However, I'm ranking it lower than some of the others from this game because it ends with this overly long chase scene with a giant robot. It's easy to dodge and takes up too much time and isn't even that fun to do with this game's boosting mechanics. But still, the level's good up until that point. Number 43. 4-2 from Sonic Frontiers. You know what this level really gets right? It's fully 3D, it's fully original, and it's good. Sure, I think any game with Frontiers controls and physics are going to rank lower, but here's the thing. The stage being fully original means it's designed with Frontiers' controls in mind, but unlike other original stages in this game, the level lasts longer than 30 seconds, so you actually get to explore the different paths and have fun with it. And the best thing is it doesn't have an original stage to compare it to from another game. And that's the best way to be, I think. This is why this is the highest ranking Sonic Frontiers stage. I can reward some actual originality. I bunched all the reused cyberspace stages together lower on the list because I just think reusing whole level designs is so creatively bankrupt that Sonic Forces would blush over it, which I already described as one of the most creatively bankrupt Sonic games ever made. It was especially bad for Frontiers to reuse so much stuff because the comparison was never in Frontiers' favor. I don't like Sonic Frontiers, but in this one instance, I liked this fully original stage, which is the end of Frontiers' run on the list. Number 42. Seaside Hill from Sonic Heroes. Seaside Hill is a good stage, but when I replay it, I notice it's on the slower side. It's got parts I like for sure, as it effectively tutorializes the mechanics of Heroes and features plenty of moments where its teammate mechanics are useful. However, compared to Emerald Coast and City Escape from SA1 and 2, Seaside Hill is comparatively dry. Not much in the way of high-speed thrills, and it has the kart sections that are hit or miss. But I'm not saying this is a bad level by any means. I enjoy playing it, seeing its different pathways, the platforming is well done, there's enough speed to get 2 points in the list, and so on. It's a good first level, but not as good as the previous or later games' first levels. Number 41. Cool Edge from the Wii version of Sonic Unleashed. What this game excels at is fusing old Sonic Adventure-esque level design and pathways with boosting gameplay. The day stages in this game do that in a way that not many others do. Cool Edge is a perfect demonstration of that. Like this enemy above a grind rail away from the main path. It's a fun stage for little hidden routes like that, but it does also have long automated 2D scenes and this opening sequence that doesn't involve core gameplay, but it's a really fun stage at the end of the day. Number 40. Dragon Road from Sonic Unleashed. The Wii version of Dragon Road succeeds where all the other Unleashed levels do, providing a lot of ways to engage with the stage as you have to find the fastest way to do it to get that S rank. Dragon Road's different paths are obvious right from the start of the level, and then later on you go so fast you can just grind on the water, which is pretty cool. I find this level really satisfying, though I wouldn't dream of loading this game up to play this stage particularly, so not perfect in replayability, and it does have some parts where not much is going on besides boosting forward on dash pads, so points off for that too, but still, really good stage. Number 39. Frog Forest / Lost Jungle from Sonic Heroes. So now I'm back to Heroes levels that are being joined together because they wound up with the same score. Frog Forest was always a level I thought was neat. Normally I'm against the whole floating geometry in the middle of the sky thing, but for one level I think it's pretty cool since the theme is that you're way up in the tallest of trees with these frogs that control the weather scattered around. In this level, there's plenty of good skips and jumps you can do and fun to navigate platforming with the flight formation. This is a good stage, and Lost Jungle is another quality stage for many of the same reasons. I just think Heroes is a fun game to speed through if you know what you're doing and know where to jump and all that. But this level does have a few too many segments riding this flower thing, and also has this chase with a giant gator at the end, which may be one of the jankiest parts of the entire game. Sometimes you'll try to jump and we'll just fall into the abyss. But still, I think the level's good, despite having lost several A ranks right here in this part. Number 38. Jungle Joyride from Sonic Unleashed. Obviously, it doesn't have much on the HD version of this stage that we'll get to, but I really like this level. Similar to the HD stage, you start in the docks of Adabat and progress through the water and into the jungle. In that time, you get to do what Unleashed excels at, blasting through open spaces to find optimal routes to get the S rank time. This level just happens to be one of my favorite examples. This is the last level before Eggman lands, and the challenge is pretty high here, so I thought it was worth being this high on the list. Number 37. Rooftop Run from the Wii version of Sonic Unleashed. Rooftop Run is a real highlight of both versions of Unleashed and Sonic Generations. It's such a great set piece as Sonic tears through a city at light speed, traveling through the town and the streets and onto the rooftops, up a huge clock tower, and then back down to the ground for the final segment. It's a lot of content in just a few minutes time, and as is tradition in the Wii version, they fit in a lot of different routes to explore that make the stage really rewarding to play on its own right. I just think this is the best one in the game, which is why it ranked this high. Which means, yeah, this is the final stage for Unleashed on the Wii. This game is the poster child for how stages in this list are ranked on how they're designed, but also in how you experience them. I've been highlighting throughout how well designed the layouts are for Unleashed, and that's because I do think these are fantastic levels from a map and platforming perspective. I just don't think the Wii version controls that well compared to the other Boost games, so my enjoyment of it is diminished thanks to that. But the levels are strong enough to make the top 100, and many of them making top 50, and that's worthy of celebration. Number 36. Ice Cap from Sonic Adventure. This is a mostly perfect stage. In Sonic's opening segment, there is a path you're supposed to take, but spin dash jumping makes it easy to skip to the inner cavern. When you're inside, you can slowly climb up, but some well-timed spin dash jumps also make it super easy to clear with practice and precision. Where it loses me is the finale, where Sonic rides a snowboard down a mountain. It's cool the first time, but upon the 1000th revisit, it's not that exciting and the terrain is super bumpy, so it's not that satisfying to travel down. The other sections being a little short, meaning that this part takes up most of the runtime. So I really like sections 1 and 2, but just not 3, which is why it lost points. Number 35. Grand Metropolis from Sonic Heroes. This stage got a similar score to Power Plant because I have similar feelings about it, but Grand Metropolis is more fun to play, so I ranked it higher. The level is pretty linear by Heroes standards, but there are some good moments like light dashing off to the side to get ahead instead of going on the main path. And where it wins out over Power Plant is that it has less combat, and it also doesn't have too long elevator sequences, which slowed the pacing down in the second act compared to this one, which I find to be a perfectly good stage. Number 34. White Jungle from Sonic Adventure 2. I don't have a lot to say on this level. It's not the flashiest SA2 speed stage, but it's a lot of fun to play as Shadow as he needs to get through the forest as quickly as possible to save Rouge from the locked safe on Prison Island. The only reason I took a point off on this level was because there were a few too many scenes of flying around on vines, but otherwise I think it's a fast-paced, fun-to-replay stage that keeps you engaged for its pretty short runtime, so I couldn't ask for much more. Number 33. Tropical Resort from Sonic Colors. It's kind of interesting how Sonic Colors just had 2 low-ranking stages and the rest are near the top. Colors was last on the list like 70 entries ago, and it's back with the opening levels. Colors is not quite the fast-paced game that Sonic Unleashed was, so the speed category was kept at a 2. That's just because Colors has the same boosting controls as Unleashed and Generations, but you only refill the boost from white Wisp capsules, which aren't as common as Rings, which filled it in those 2 games. Colors put more focus on platforming, and it certainly shows. One of the things that makes Sonic Colors so rewarding to play isn't just the high-speed based reaction platforming, but replaying levels using the various wisps to get to new areas and collecting all the red star rings. Tropical Resort puts all that on display, which is perfect for an opening zone. Also having a good balance of 3D gameplay and 2D gameplay, which some Colors zones struggle with. Number 32. Planet Wisp from Sonic Colors. I ranked this one higher than Tropical Resort because it has higher highs, but it is one where there's a bit too much 2D for my liking in a 3D Sonic game. But we're just focusing on 3D content here, so with that said, you get a lot of good stuff, like how you boost off of the first ramp to get to a higher alternate route with the red ring, and there are fast quick step sections throughout, and this really cool part in Act 6 where you drop down from this homing attack chain to get into this free fall section with a red ring. It's an iconic level from Colors and for good reason. It's great to look at and has that classic Sonic nature gradually taken over by machines aesthetic down pat. And that's why it ranked so high on the list. Number 31. Sweet Mountain from Sonic Colors. This zone is definitely one of the highlights from Colors. This level earns points in the same areas as the previous 2, wisps making it fun to replay the stages, platforming in abundance, and a decent amount of speed. However, I find the 3D sections of Sweet Mountain to be some of the most substantive ones in the game. The wisps leading to alternate routes is great in its own, but this level has other cool stuff, like this totally skippable section in a level that in and of itself has a hidden route buried under these containers which bring you up higher towards one of the red rings. The game does a great job incentivizing replays, and these 3D sections especially do. Like this one where you're in a circle of enemies and the route ahead is right in front of you, but moving over to the left you can see another quicker route through the stage. And that's just the kind of design I like. There are a few too many drifting, quick-stepping, and grind rail bits in the stage that slow it down a bit, but it's an otherwise perfect stage. Number 30. Hang Castle / Mystic Mansion from Sonic Heroes. I always liked levels that stand out visually, and this is the perfect example. The designers and artists fully leaned into the spooky theme and made some really fun levels. Halloween-themed enemies, supernatural elements like ghosts and invisible platforms, turning the level upside down, and great visuals like the Eggman statue showing Metal Sonic when you turn it upside down. Backing that up is a pair of really fun levels to play, featuring all the things I like in a Sonic stage, like being able to make daring jumps to lessen your time, and exciting set pieces like the minecart sequence in Mystic Mansion. The only point off came from how Mystic Mansion is kind of on the long side and can be easy to die right at the end and lose your A rank, so I'm not keen to replay this level over some of the others, but it's great. Number 29. Ocean Palace from Sonic Heroes. I think it's this level where Heroes starts to take off a little more. This level has shortcuts that are obvious, like taking the flight character up to the top of a split pathway over using the speed character on the ground, but also plenty of shortcuts that are fun to do with the movement, like rocket excelling past a jump. There's also a great section with these turtles where you can go in a bunch of different directions, and it has a chase scene at the end that isn't usually prone to janky failure and death. So it's a cool stage. But I did take 1 point off because by adventure gameplay standards it's kind of long, but I still think it's a worthy stage of making the top 30. Number 28. Emerald Coast from Sonic Adventure. The first ever 3D Sonic stage is definitely one of the best. Emerald Coast's design laid out the blueprint for how to design all the other stages on the list, which is a lot to put on one level, but this one really pulled it off. Right at the start, you can either take the spring forward or spin dash jump ahead to save a few seconds of time. The level hides item boxes in clever locations throughout, has higher routes that save time, but are harder to reach like any good stage from the earlier games, and has flashy set pieces like the Orca chase to show that this game wanted to dazzle you visually with action-packed sequences as much as it did with the gameplay. It's an all-time classic Sonic stage. You could play it 100 times over and still enjoy it just the same. It's not my favorite, but it's great. Number 27. Asteroid Coaster from Sonic Colors. This game is filled with creative level themes, but Asteroid Coaster manages to stand tall amongst that roster. Sonic finds himself on deadly roller coasters throughout an asteroid field. The stage gets a lot out of its space theme, like homing attacking different asteroids to reach different planetoids that house secrets or just a regular shortcut. The coaster scenes could have been fully automated, but depending on when you jump off, you get different pathways. You explore inside of a giant asteroid and see colorful machinery and play around with the Frenzy Wisp. It's got a lot going for it in one stage, and is a ton of fun to replay in its 3D acts. Unfortunately, while the level shines in most respects, you don't control Sonic on the ground as much as you ride coasters and play 2D sections, all of which are good, but I did take a point off in speed because of that. Number 26. Sky Rail from Sonic Adventure 2. This is a short but sweet level. Sky Rail is exactly what it sounds like. Shadow chases after the Tornado 2 on these grind rails in the canyon to the tune of some pretty sick music. As we'll talk about in a future SA2 entry, grinding on rails is actually fun in this game since it requires you to balance the character to stay on it. So going fast on a rail in this game is satisfying, and getting the perfect trick jumps off the end of one is just perfection. Since you don't do much in this stage besides rail grinding, I did take a point off in the platforming category, but I otherwise think this level's pretty based, not gonna lie. Number 25. Crisis City from Sonic Generations. Now we're in the top 25, and I can't think of a better stage to kick it off than Crisis City from Generations. Yeah, we haven't seen this game in quite some time, in 84 entries to be specific. That's because there's only one bad level in this game and the rest are masterpieces, including Crisis City, a beautiful reimagining of the 06 stage, including everything that Generations levels are great at. Different, substantive routes that reward repeat runs, exciting, speedy segments like running towards the flaming tornado at the end, and it's just a blast to play. The only thing I don't like about it is the 2D section towards the end where you need to stomp down on rocky platforms coming up from the lava. That part was lame and a bit of a pace breaker, but that's the only thing that stopped this one from getting a perfect score. Number 24. Windmill Isle from Sonic Unleashed. Windmill Isle has 2 required day acts, but I'm just focusing on the second one, as the first is more of a tutorial. This is the first true level of Unleashed, and what a great first impression it was. Unleashed has aesthetics down pat, this level taking place in the Greece-esque country of Apatos as Sonic tears through it at warp speed, blasting through tables and chairs and making sharp turns into different streets. It's a really satisfying stage because like all Unleashed levels, it's trying to be an actual environment, something that will come up a lot when talking about Unleashed. I've replayed this level so many times that trying to find every time save and skip to get the S rank is such a great opening stage. The only knock against it you could make is that it is perhaps light on platforming, but there is a decent amount of reacting to obstacles, so I only took off 1 point. But the level is an absolute blast to play otherwise. Number 23. Green Forest from Sonic Adventure 2. Now this is an absolutely iconic stage. It takes place right after Sonic's first fight with Shadow, which was already a super iconic moment. But then you find out the island's gonna blow up. Like White Jungle, there's a time limit throughout the stage, though it's pretty generous. But the set piece is explosive nevertheless, pardon the pun. The music gets you pumped up on adrenaline as you need to get off the island before it blows. While doing so, you'll tear through gun mechs, climb treetops, swing on bark, and jump through crumbling platforms. For an SA2 stage, it really got everything. It masterfully captures everything I like to see in a Sonic level, but it's not my favorite, so it didn't quite make top 20, but it's nearly there, and is a stage I can gladly declare as the first to get a perfect score. Number 22. Dragon Road from Sonic Unleashed. Another fantastic setting to go along with a fun level. In the fictional land of Chunnan, Sonic starts this level racing across the Great Wall of China, and there are plenty of moments where this level succeeds at the 3 categories this video judges the levels on, but then also effortlessly fuses them together. You go at light speed in this game, but then need to react and make jumps at just the right times to get shortcuts and save the most time. So it's some of the most fast-paced gameplay in the series, and it has perilous platforming and shortcuts you need to react to, and you can never get enough of it no matter how many times you run through it. This stage just has so many great moments, like the opening 2D bit having different paths to take, grinding on rails above this building instead of going inside, and a cool chase scene at the end. The only part I don't like is this one, where I've had countless runs die because I tried to homing attack this enemy to skip this platforming part only to accidentally air boost into the abyss. So that's annoying, but otherwise, banger level. Number 21. Radical Highway from Sonic Adventure 2. We got another iconic one incoming. Radical Highway sticks out in so many players' minds because it was the first time you ever got to play as Shadow the Hedgehog in a full stage. If you played the hero side story first, you saw how powerful Shadow was, and then you got to see how Dr. Eggman released Shadow at the start of the dark side story. Getting to play as him is a treat, but then the level is super fun to play. Shadow's getting chased by Gun after he stole a Chaos Emerald, and they're no match for the ultimate life form blasting through the highway. And there's plenty of smart level design throughout, like this tall structure with springs. You can save time by just jumping around it and getting a free item balloon. Or later when you can jump on top of these loops to get easy access to a spring that takes you to the top of the Golden Gate Bridge as Shadow effortlessly grinds down the rails, skipping past the pretty tough platforming part in the ground. It's iconic, but also supremely well designed. Number 20. Aquarium Park from Sonic Colors. When I think of my favorite Colors levels, I think Sweet Mountain has some of my favorite 3D sections from a design perspective, and Asteroid Coaster is definitely my favorite level concept, but this zone has a lot of fun moments. I think Aquarium Park does have some egregious 2D sections, but when just thinking about the mostly 3D levels, I can't find fault here. Great moments are littered throughout, like boosting on this dash pad to get more height and reaching this grind rail to get a different route into the building. And there are moments where the wisps, when used at the right time, will give you great shortcuts as well. There's a chase scene, skips with the boost, with the wisps, and you see a lot of wisps used in one zone. Different routes with red rings, underwater exploration, serene music. I just think this zone is one of my favorites from Sonic Colors to play. But now that we're at the top 20, it is worth saying how, for a lot of these entries, the order kind of matters less because they all got perfect scores, and so the order was just based on the vibe I had while writing this. Is Aquarium Park better than Radical Highway and Dragon Road? I don't know. I just thought it'd be nice to include Sonic Colors in the top 20, which does mean this is the last time Sonic Colors appears in the list. It's absolutely a fantastic game throughout, definitely one of my favorite Sonic games, albeit not my absolute favorite or even top 5. But as the list has shown, I think it's a mostly clean roster of fun levels, and is right up there with Unleashed as having some of the strongest art direction in series history, pulling off the abstract visual design idea so much better than any of the games to go for it since. But yeah, that's it for Colors. Number 19. Egg Fleet from Sonic Heroes. This is one of the biggest reasons why Heroes levels got separated when convenient. This is the first of the 2 final stages, and you might recall that the last level, Final Fortress, appeared way earlier on the list, and I didn't want to drag Egg Fleet down by combining it with the second level because, as you can see, I think Egg Fleet is one of the best levels in the 3D series. You've seen what traits a good level has at this point, and this one's got it all. Taking place on a series of airships miles above the clouds, you get a lot of freedom to run around in this one. Different ships and rails you can land on, paths and shortcuts you can access by playing the speed, flight, or power formations, putting all of Heroes' unique gameplay mechanics to work. Also having cool skips that weren't intentional, like using the blue tornado here to skip a bit of platforming. And there are satisfying moments like blasting through the generator of a ship and blowing it sky high, and using the explosion to get flung to the next one. It's a really exciting stage and is absolutely the best one from Sonic Heroes. This game took up a lot of space in the middle of the list, but I think its standout great levels absolutely had enough sauce to make it this high on the list. But now, that is the last we'll see of Sonic Heroes. Number 18. Metal Harbor from Sonic Adventure 2. This has been one of my all-time favorite Sonic stages for a hot minute. This is a case where it's pretty linear, but the ride is very exciting to play as you need to maximize every last moment to get enough points for the A rank. Like light dashing on the first rings you see to get onto the grind rail for a good point bonus. But the main reason I've played this level so many times is because of the rocket towards the end. You have to climb up this tower to hitch a ride in the rocket before it takes off, but there are 2 spots to hop on. You get way more points if you run past the first one and make it to the very top of the tower. But the risk is running out of time and having to start over if you want the A rank, but the reward is 1500 points. And then you jump off the rocket and skateboard down the silo towards the goal ring. It's short, but very, very sweet. Plus, I like getting all 174 rings in the stage. If you ever wondered why you're always missing it by one, that's because the 100th ring is hiding on top of this platform on screen now. It's a stage loaded with secrets and cool moments. What more can I say? Number 17. Savannah Citadel from Sonic Unleashed. I have a lot of fondness for this stage, mainly because it was the first level ever shown for Unleashed in the pre-release. Can you imagine seeing footage of the new Sonic game, never having seen it before, and seeing that it goes this fast? But past the surprise of how excellent the gameplay is here, the level still holds up. Unleashed does platforming so much differently than any other Sonic game, and that is why so many of its levels rank so high. Unleashed is easily the fastest Sonic game, which other games trade platforming to get, but in this game, whether it's 2D or 3D sections, there will always be blink and you miss it shortcuts like this one on screen now that cuts down time in the final 2D section. It's built for a bunch of replays since the game has the toughest grading system since Adventure 2. Many Unleashed levels I'll discuss soon have this quality, but this level is another perfect example. Number 16. Red Mountain from Sonic Adventure. Fun fact, when I made the spreadsheet that contained all the levels for the list, I actually completely forgot this one. It was only once I noticed the list in the script didn't have the right number of stages compared to the spreadsheet for an utterly unrelated mistake that I then noticed SA1 had 10 entries instead of 11. Which is funny because Red Mountain is pretty peak as far as SA1 levels are concerned. This level works beautifully with different characters playing in it. Knuckles exploring the open outdoors for emerald pieces, and Gamma exploring the insides for enemies to destroy. Of course, other gameplay styles aren't being factored in here, but I just thought it was cool to highlight how the level is well designed to where it's fun to play as multiple characters with different objectives. In Sonic's version, you have to scale up the mountain, and on the way up, you'll find plenty of moments for spin dash jump skips, hidden item boxes, and light dash trails. It's really open and epic as you chase the egg carrier. But then you go inside the mountain and get this sick guitar track in the background as you avoid lava and rocks falling, only to re-emerge outside at the end of the level, quickly transitioning from this stage to the third act of Sonic's story. It's just a really fun and replayable stage. What more could you want? Number 15. Green Hill from Sonic Generations. The first 3D level of Sonic Generations is definitely a banger. This was, naturally, the first level ever shown for Sonic Generations, and it looked incredible from day one. But once you got to play the game, you saw how much fun it actually was. Unleashed and Generations basically play the same, but the two handle the platforming and speed balance much differently. Something evident as early as Green Hill is that in Generations, speed is high like Unleashed, only now with improved handling. But the platforming and alternate routes don't come from nanosecond reaction time like Unleashed. Instead, it comes from the player's own curiosity. Like how you could run forward through this loop, or you could stomp through the wooden bridge and get a whole new route. It is a magnificently designed opening level. Truly one for the ages. I've replayed it countless times since Generations released, but the other 14 entries above it were just so good that I ranked it here at number 15. Number 14. Final Rush from Sonic Adventure 2. This level really kicked my butt as a kid, which I suppose is natural since it's the final stage of the Hero's Side story. But when playing it now, I can only see it for the masterpiece of stage design that it is. As I've mentioned before, SA2 stages revolving around grind rails isn't the death sentence it would be for a stage in a later game, because Sonic Adventure 2 has actual mechanics behind grinding. So therefore, if you know how to do it, you can go really fast. And I only just learned recently that when going up vertical rails, you can jump off of it for huge height and then reach hidden routes. It's SA2's most open stage by far, and it's such a cool visual as the planet is down below while Sonic races to the Eclipse Cannon to stop it before Eggman blows up the Earth. It has everything you could want from a final stage and then some. It's just not my favorite. Number 13. Speed Highway from Sonic Adventure. This is SA1's most iconic level, and I'd say for good reason. Sonic's run of Speed Highway has 3 sections. The first of them is on the rooftops of a huge city while you speed down the highways and explore different pathways to do so. Fun fact, if you hit this speed shoe box on the wall here, jump down to the below area and go backwards, you'll find another speed shoes box and it will give you infinite speed shoes for the rest of the stage. No lie, try it out. But then, the second section sees Sonic running down the side of a huge building at full speed, and the camera work really makes this exciting. The final section is the town at the bottom as the sun is rising. This part is really short-lived for Sonic, especially if you know some speedrun strats, but it's a really dynamic and satisfying stage to play, well worthy of a perfect score. Also being the highest ranking level from Sonic Adventure on the list. There were some much lower ranking SA1 levels, but for the most part, the first 3D Sonic game still has the sauce, to the point where it almost reached the top 10 of the list. But yeah, that's it for SA1. Number 12. Cool Edge from Sonic Unleashed. I wasn't sure if this one was going to get a perfect score or not when I started doing the ranking, because Cool Edge does feature this bobsled part where you don't get to control how fast you move. However, there's enough interactivity here, like jumping at the right angle for a shortcut, that I can overlook it. Otherwise, Cool Edge is some of the most satisfying segments in the entire game. Many parts are on ice and you play at Mach speed, so having mastery over the mechanics to where you can make all the shortcuts with the right timing is super satisfying. And then there are other exciting set pieces like going through these caves where stalactites are falling, or going so fast that you're running on the water in the ocean. I've played this level so many times and it never gets old. It was an easy choice to give it a perfect score when it came down to it. Number 11. Arid Sands from Sonic Unleashed. This is a level I had a really hard time with my first few playthroughs of Unleashed, but the more years went by and replays of the day stages that I did, the more I came to really appreciate how demanding the stage is in terms of reflexes. It never lets up. Right at the beginning, you've got to get on this light dash trail for a shortcut and need to drift just the right angles to take these dash pads and shave a few seconds off your time. The stage being full of jumps to shortcuts you can barely see, and you can procedurally cut a lot of time off the run doing so. Many of those shortcuts are do or die. The rings you collect only factoring into your score at the very end of the level, so you need to not take damage, which adds some extra stakes to the falling pillar sections towards the end of the stage. It's just a few minutes long, but it packs in non-stop action, and for that I think it's a phenomenal stage that is endlessly replayable. Number 10. Chemical Plant from Sonic Generations. Alright, top 10 time. Honestly, picking the list from this point on was pretty difficult because these are all levels I could replay any day of the week and have an amazing time with, but I tried my best to rank them. Chemical Plant Modern is such a blast to play. Right at the start, you'll see there are 3 paths to go on, and each one takes you to a different spot. The one on the left brings you to a shortcut that skips the entire opening segment of the stage, but you need to nail your air boost and light dash timing to get it right. And then the level remains really open-ended and diverse throughout its whole runtime. The only thing it got lower on the list than some of the others that are higher is that it does have a little too much 2D for my liking, but those parts are still solidly designed, and the 3D sections are spectacular. But I thought that was enough to lower it to the number 10 spot. Number 9. City Escape from Sonic Adventure 2. I mean, come on, it's the most iconic level in all of 3D Sonic by far. It's the opening level of SA2 and it came in swinging. Gun arrests Sonic and he jumps out of the helicopter and turns the wing into a skateboard, jumps from 1,000 feet in the sky, and the stage begins with you tearing up the streets with this skateboard, as jumping off these ramps with the right timing gives you differing amount of points. Then, once you get to the ground, you need to get through the busy streets while Gun is still chasing Sonic. All to the tune of Escape from the City, which is an absolute earworm. Along the way, you'll jump off of ramps for points, grind on rails in the streets, and just have a great time while doing it. The level ending with the massive gun truck trying to run Sonic over and need to outrun it. The level was such a great way to introduce the game and show how much the designers had grown in making 3D action set pieces between the release of SA1 and SA2. It's well deserved as the most iconic 3D Sonic level, but despite SA2 being one of my favorite Sonic games, I couldn't put this one in the top 5. This is the highest ranking stage from Adventure 2, and I think it was totally worthy of that slot. However, when looking at it, I just think Unleashed and Generations have the best stage designs and gameplay mechanics of the entire Sonic franchise. So for that reason, we now say goodbye to Sonic Adventure 2. Number 8. Skyscraper Scamper from Sonic Unleashed. This is another level that just gets better each time I play it, and that's a lot of runs by now. Unleashed, as established earlier in the list, is great at creating exhilarating set pieces, so going through the highways and rooftops of a major metropolitan area is exciting in and of itself. But then the level has so many fantastic moments to speak of. Like at the beginning when you're attacking these enemies, you can go off to the left and find a hidden route that skips the opening section of the stage. And then the level has moments like that from top to bottom, where you can jump off these grind rails and land on a lower portion of the rail, cutting off some seconds from your run. It's just fun to avoid obstacles at top speed. I love the skips. I just think it's a fantastic level. But it's not my favorite because the other levels above it just did it even better for me. Number 7. Rooftop Run from Sonic Generations. This level's near perfect if you ask me. Say it with me, the level produces numerous chances to demonstrate skill through shortcuts that cut down your time, it's fast-paced, it's fun to play, it's everything that makes Sonic Generations and Sonic as a whole great. However, since Generations is a game all about reimagining past levels, you may have noticed that Rooftop Run from Sonic Unleashed has yet to appear on the list. Unleashed and Generations both have the same gameplay. Not exactly the same handling, but it's pretty close. For that reason, while I think Rooftop Run is a perfect stage in Generations with plenty to distinguish it from the Unleashed version, ultimately I think the level feels like a truncated version of what was in Unleashed and I simply like the original more. But again, that's not to disparage Rooftop Run from Generations. I love this level, I love the festive remix of the original theme, but it's just not good enough to make it to top 5. Number 6. Jungle Joyride from Sonic Unleashed. The final level before Eggman Land is definitely one of my favorites from this game. The country of Adabat is in many ways the calm before the storm, especially when looking at the story of Unleashed and the nighttime stage, but the day stage of Jungle Joyride is exactly as the name implies. You start in the docks, having to quick step, jump, and slide to avoid obstacles like crumbling boardwalks and swinging axes. That part will be difficult enough, but in typical Unleashed fashion, you can get a lot of reward from taking daring jumps in the 2D sections to reach higher passages that cut down on the time. The 3D sections are also home to an abundance of unorthodox shortcuts too, and go completely off course to find a secret pathway obscured from view. But at the same time, you have to do it quickly or else you'll die, because if you don't keep your speed up on the water, you drown immediately. While running on the water, you'll be dodging crumbling pillars too. The stage just has so much going on and it never lets up. You get chased through the woods, climb up some temple grounds, grind on rails with a scenic waterfall in the background. It is a really complex stage that deserves that perfect score. Number 5. Speed Highway from Sonic Generations. Another masterpiece of a level to add to Generations' roster. Speed Highway was already an amazing stage from SA1, I was just talking about it a few minutes ago, but this reimagined version is even better. I keep saying right at the start there's a skip for the last like 10 entries, but with this one I mean it literally. Within 2 seconds a helicopter will run by and you can grab onto it if you run fast enough. If not, you can jump onto this grind rail for an alternate route. A few moments later you'll see this ramp leading you inside a building, but check this out. You can skip like 30 seconds doing that, but the timing is pretty precise in that jump. The springs above that ring would send you into the abyss if you hit them, so you have to know what you're doing to get that right. The level brings back iconic moments like the building scene and just has so many opportunities to demonstrate skill and go fast and all that good stuff. Moments like these keep me replaying Sonic stages until the cows come home, and that's why this level ranked so high. Number 4. Sky Sanctuary from Sonic Generations. I think this is the level where Generations really gets going. I've been talking for the last few entries about how Unleashed and Generations both do alternate routes really well, just differently. Sky Sanctuary from Generations is another model stage for how this game does it. Here, the different pathways will be obvious to the naked eye, but each one will have something worth exploring it for, be it red rings or extra lives, warranting different runs of the stage as you find out which routes you think are the most fun to blast through on repeat runs. All the while still having precise moments like jumping off this swing and onto another one in midair. Tiny challenges like beating this robot to the swing to make sure he can't block the fastest path, or outrunning the crumbling ground, which is a perfect callback to the stage it was recreating, just in 3D. It's a great stage. I think this level is a marvel of 3D Sonic game design, with a minimal amount of 2D sections that are all well designed too. Perfect stage, worthy of that perfect score. Number 3. Seaside Hill from Sonic Generations. Now we're really down to the wire. I wasn't sure if this was going to be my favorite stage from Generations or the other one that's still left, but decided to put Seaside Hill at number 3 for reasons I can explain later. To just focus on how great this stage is, it's got everything. I think this may very well be the most open-ended 3D Sonic stage that they've ever done, bar none. The very beginning has a split in the path that goes 3 ways. The one on the left jumps above the big loop that the center path takes you on as you skip right to the 2D section that can easily be navigated through with practice on repeat runs. The 3D sections are super wide open with upper routes and lower routes that all offer different and meaningful sections, and they converge at these gates, where depending on which one you go through, you either drive on the track with these go-karts, which call back to the original Seaside Hill, or you hit the turtle icon and go on the turtles below, which calls back to Ocean Palace. The music even contains remixes of both of those tracks within. It's another phenomenally designed stage, easily one of the best Sonic levels ever designed because you can play it over and over and still find something new in it, or get that new lowest time. Fantastic level. Number 2. City Escape from Sonic Generations. Seaside Hill from Generations is perhaps more open-ended than City Escape, but I think this level is more exciting for sure. As I said a few moments ago, City Escape from Adventure 2 is an iconic perfect stage, but I think this version from Generations is better. The part with the board in the street is improved by giving you all the same thrills from the original while having diverging streets to go down and rails above ground to jump on. It's a more complex segment, and then the other parts of the stage feel more open too, like how you can homing attack this enemy and quickly jump to the next section without even touching the ground. And then the gun truck chase has been dialed up to 11 with buzzsaws and the whole thing jumping onto the rooftops with Sonic trying to run him down. It takes everything from the original City Escape, dials it up to 11, while doing everything that makes Generations a fun game that rewards countless repeat runs. Since it's such a fast-paced level with diverse set pieces, I think that's why it's my absolute favorite level in Generations. And for what it's worth, City Escape is also my favorite level for Classic Sonic in this game as well. Which also means, yeah, despite Sonic Generations being my favorite officially released Sonic game, it isn't the number 1 level. Which also means, congrats to the only game left because it wins with number 1, Rooftop Run from Sonic Unleashed. I figured a generation stage would be number 1 when I started this project, but looking at the final list, this makes sense to me. Rooftop Run is the star level of Sonic Unleashed and usually comes up in people's discussions of all-time best Sonic stages. Sonic needs to get from one side of the city to the other, and on the way there, you'll be on the streets, busting through tables and chairs, and then you'll be quickly dodging through back alleys, and then you're going full speed, jumping from rooftop to rooftop, running on walls, back down to the streets, going through a sewer system, then climbing up a giant clock tower, grinding down it, and then racing to the finish in this palace structure. The stage is like 5.5 minutes of going at warp speed, and along the way, you just get to see every inch of this city, and it tells a story of the life in Spagonia. That's why I like when these levels feel like a location that actually exists in the universe. It's more satisfying and tangible to run through compared to a chunk of assets floating in the sky. It just really feels like a complete stage. It's challenging, it's replayable for all the reasons I've said for previous Unleashed levels, it's really fast-paced, it is everything you'd want from a Sonic stage, and then some. But yeah, that was that. 163 3D Sonic levels ranked from worst to best. There isn't much more I can say now that the video's over. I just thought it'd be a fun project to work on. And it was. It was a challenge to work on, as there was almost 60 entries more on this list than my Mega Man X ranking from last year, but I thought it came together really well, and I hope people enjoyed watching the video, because I'd love to do more projects like this. Some may wonder why I'd make this video when a new 3D Sonic game is about to release, and to that I say, because I felt like it. No more reason than that. And nothing is stopping me from going back and adding those in, or hell, ranking the bonus acts that got left out of this video. Which actually sounds like a decent idea, come to think about it. I may very well do that. But anyway, I think that's enough for this one. So to close, I will say, if you liked this video, say so below. I think making more videos like this will be fun. And as always, I will close by saying that if you made it this far into the video, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.